Hello, pals. Welcome back. So, we're on to day 4 of the 2013 citizen hearing about UAP. And I just want to start by reading out one of the comments that I've had over the last couple of days. I've been putting some major hours in editing and getting these videos out. And this has been so motivating. So, this is by Odd Savage, and it says, I'm loving this series. Got my mum, a newbie to the disclosure scene, hooked as well. Thanks for these. Thank you. That is the entire reason that my channel even exists. I'd quite happily just be a little weirdo studying it for myself, but I really want to get people like your mum and people that are normal and rational and curious about this a place where they can learn more about the subject without silly music and CGI aliens and stuff like that. So that really means a lot to me. Thank you. So, this is day 4, and I've rolled, just like the Roswell one, I've rolled 2 sessions into one video. There's this weird thing going on with the study of UFOs where we're incredibly America-centric. It's almost like the World Series of baseball when they're the only ones that play it. But we seem to consider disclosure to mean the American government releasing its secret files on what it's got and what it's studied to do with this. But this is a global phenomenon. America isn't even a sixth of the planet, and yet it takes up 99% of their attention. But there are amazing podcasts and investigators like the O Contacto podcast from Brazil, and great research out there being done. So this session is all about South American sightings and investigations. And you're going to hear about some incredible things from first and second hand witnesses, like the Project Saucer study from Brazil, where their government invested a huge amount of time and money to not only study the phenomena, but to try and make contact with the entities or intelligence behind it. So I know the first sort of 15 to 20 minutes is quite a formal and nervous introduction.
Meeting is called to order. Have we done the swearing in yet?
We have not.
Okay, do you want to do the swearing in?
I do.
Thank you.
And repeat after me. And feel free to say this in your native language. I do hereby affirm that I will tell the truth and nothing but the truth to this committee today. Thank you so much. Gracias.
We have heard from a number of people this week that this phenomena has gone on, and it will be interesting to hear what you have to say from a variety of countries in South America, and I'm anxious to hear what all of you have to say. This is one of those hearings that I think our witnesses have all been absolutely fantastic. They have been ex-military, they have been people that have actually seen what's happened, they have studied it, they have done research, and today we are very fortunate to have you here at this hearing, and appreciate your coming, and am anxious to hear what you have to say. So I am not going to spend a lot of time talking because I want to hear what you have to say. So welcome. And we will start out with, and if I don't say your name correctly, you'll tell it to me, please. Is it Gevaerd? Yes, Mr. Gevaerd from Brazil.
Thank you very much. I would like to begin with by thanking all of you members of the Congress who has given your time and your effort, your attention to the subject. We are all really anxious to see the results of this. I think it's a major step that has been done here in Washington. This is history in making, and I'm very glad to be part of it along with my fellow researcher friends from South America. And we are here from several countries in South America. I have on my side Chile, Uruguay, Peru, and Argentina, all of we are willing to invite you to dive into South American UFO research. But before I go on, I would like to ask permission to you, gentlemen and ladies, to introduce my fellow researcher and friend from Brazil, who is a businessman and is also a former congressman for the Brazilian Congress, who is much likely to be again after July, as he is the next one. And this gentleman has given us in Brazil a strong support to development of the Brazilian ufology in several projects. Now, he has some views that he would like to share with us, with you, and I would like to ask permission to introduce Mr. Wilson Picler.
I am absolutely delighted he's here. I understand from our short conversation that how your legislative process works and how ours works is quite different, but we may learn some lessons from you in the process. So welcome.
Okay. Madam Chairperson, members of committee, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure to speak in this conference. And I would like to congratulate the representatives of the American Congress for this important conference that will be remembered for the mankind forever. This is a beginning of a process of disclosure of the most important event for mankind lately. We wish for long to have contact with space people, and this fact has been hidden for the government for long. Why the government decided to hide it from the people? Such an important fact, because we have heard here in this conference from the militaries, retired militaries, that these beings, extraterrestrial beings, have such a capability of interfering in the nuclear weapon systems, even activating and deactivating these weapons. This explains why governments hide this from the people, because it changed the balance of power in the entire world. And they are doing a campaign to take out the credibility of this phenomena. And those people that are working here for many years, working hard with difficulties, is passing through humiliations. Is it humiliation?
That's it.
Yeah? Because they say they do not exist. UFO do not exist. In fact, what we have heard here, they exist, they are here to save us against the insanity of our leaders. Because the powerful of these nuclear weapons can destroy the whole planet. I have hidden yesterday to prepare this speech the power of the last detonation. It was by Russians. It is 3,333 times the power of Hiroshima bomb. So, do you know the name the Russians put in that artifact? Translated to English, it is, "We will show you." It could be called, must be called, "We hope we never use it." So, just looking at the name of this artifact, like Hiroshima bomb, little boy, the other one, fat man, we can see what is the mentality of those people that are behind these weapons. And we declare, by the ufologist community and also those ones that do not do research but has in their heart, in their mind, a great wish to establish a friendship relationship with extraterrestrials. So what is happening here is really quite important for mankind. Congratulate for everybody that is organizing, taking part of this conference. Congratulations for the representatives of the American Congress. We are working towards the interest of the people of the earth and not the interest of a few persons in the world that decide things for us, as it was already have been told here in this conference. And I would like to finish my speech thanks for the great architect of the universe to send these motherships to save us against our insanity. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Excuse me.
And
Thank
again,
you.
thank all of you for traveling a great distance to be here. I thought I traveled a long way just because I came across the United States, but thank you. We're going to start out with Mr. Gevaerd.
Thank you, Madam. Thank you, Professor Wilson Picler. I must add that as when he gets back as a congressman in Brazilian Congress, he wants to do something like this inside the House, inside the Brazilian Congress, as an official part of its agenda. Now, what you will see this morning with my friends and mine testimonies is a slightly different type of ufology, of UFO research. You will see that our continent, the South America, is by far the continent that has most numbered agencies to officially investigate the UFO phenomena. Has now or have had in the past several entities, bodies inside the armed forces of several countries to investigate the UFO phenomena. Right now, as we speak, there is a very active organization investigating UFOs in Uruguay that has been on for 20-some years, and in Chile that has been on since 1997 and on. Brazil has had many. Ecuador has had. Peru has had. Argentina already has. So in South America, there is a different view towards this phenomena. And I will speak especially about Brazil, my country, and presenting myself before I go on, I would like to say that I'm 51 years old, and I have been devoting my life to this phenomena since I was a kid. It is at least for 35 years that I'm dedicating myself to the investigation of this phenomenon. I'm the editor of a magazine that is one of the longest living magazines about UFOs in the world. It's 30 years in existence. And I have specialized lately in finding out and interviewing retired personnel from the armed forces, mostly from Air Force, but also from Navy and from Army, to interview them, to extract from them information of how Brazil has dealt officially with the UFO phenomena in the last 50 or 6 years. Now, I will begin by saying that just 2 weeks ago, this time, we had a meeting between Brazilian civilian UFO researchers, 6 of us of the Brazilian Committee of UFO Researchers, with members of the armed forces, 10 personnel from Army, Air Force, and Navy at the Ministry of Defense of Brazil. That was a meeting, a historical meeting that was called. We were invited by the Ministry of Defense of one of the largest countries in the world to deal with the UFO phenomenon. I would like to show you some pictures, please, Jennifer, of this meeting that took place on April 18th. This is our federal capital. This is Brasilia. It's a modern capital. Please, the next one. We were received by officers of the Ministry of Defense of Brazil in the building of the Ministry of Defense, where we could meet not only this official, but also members of the Brazilian Air Force, Army, and Navy, as I showed you. Again, you now get another picture, please. There you can see this meeting that was being conducted by the Secretary of the Minister, Ambassador Celso Amorim. Next, please. This is the Brazilian Committee of UFO Researchers members, my fellow research colleagues in Brazil. Next, please. Next, please. Thank you.
Okay.
Now, it was given to us at this time a promise that we, the civilian UFO researchers, will have a clear, unobstructed channel of communication with our armed forces through the Ministry of Defense, because they are subordinated to the Ministry of Defense. And it was also granted to us the promise that more papers and documents will be disclosed in the near future. And we're talking about June, maybe July, that some 100 new pages of UFO documents will be released. Now, for those of you who don't have the details of it, let me tell you that Brazil has been involved officially in the investigation of the UFO phenomena for decades. Actually, it was one of the first countries in the world to officially admit that we are being visited by extraterrestrial powers, extraterrestrial civilization. It took place in 1954 in Rio de Janeiro, when it was assembled, one gathering among military, top-ranking military from the Brazilian Air Force and members of the press and the society. And it was declared that the UFO phenomenon is very serious, worth of scrutiny, and has to be fully investigated. That was in 1954. And from that moment on, Brazil has been involved in several projects, have held several projects, mainly from the Brazilian Air Force, to investigate it. We had in 1969 a body that was created inside the Brazilian Air Force to investigate the subject, and it was called System of Investigation of Aerial Phenomena, Area Unidentified Phenomena, COANI. It was spread all over the country using all the installations of the Brazilian Air Force, and it conducted dozens of investigations all over, including of sightings of UFOs, chasing of aircrafts, landing of UFOs, including with extraterrestrial entities, extraterrestrial biological entities outside the crafts. It was all documented in an official way by the Brazilian Air Force from 1969 to 1972. Now, a decade later, or 2 decades later, a decade later, in 1977, we have had another very important program to investigate this phenomena in the Amazon, and in a particular area in the Amazon where the UFO phenomenon was being observed by the inhabitants, especially of an island called Colares. The situation was so intense, the UFOs was being observed all over that island and in large portions of the Amazon region, that the Brazilian Air Force put together a committee of members to investigate the phenomena officially, and it was called Operation Saucer. Operation Saucer lasted from September 1977 to December 1977. It interviewed hundreds of people that were in contact with this phenomenon. But more than that, it was the purpose of the Operation Saucer. First, to talk to the witnesses to see what are their reports. Second, to try to document the presence of this phenomena. And over 500 pictures of UFO were produced, along with 16 hours of video, actually of footage, and film, 8 millimeters and 16 millimeters, military-style films of UFOs in the Amazon, sometimes at close range. And the third objective of the Operation Saucer, and this is official from the Brazilian Air Force, was try to establish contacts with intelligences beyond this phenomenon. This is all very intense. 2,000 pages have been produced by 36 men who took part in this operation. I was the one chosen by the commander of this operation 20 years after it was ended to interview him, and he gave me, with a huge amount of details, what went on in that period of time. Since then, I have been chasing the information about the Operation Saucer and UFOs in Amazon forever and everywhere I could find. And I'm glad to bring, and I would like to get introduced to this proceeding results, 440 pages, which is 20% of what there is of official UFO documents from the Brazilian Air Force that register, including with photos, maps, radar detects croquis, designs, all sorts of information related to the UFOs in the Amazon, and lots of this procedure were followed by American military in the Amazon. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think we're going to just go down the line and have everyone testify and then come back for questions, if that's all right. Welcome, and I'm probably going to butcher your last name, but Antonio Huneeus. Huneeus, okay. Welcome to the committee.
Thank you. Good morning, distinguished members of the panel. I already introduced myself on Monday
Yes, I
about a
know.
little bit my biography, so this time I will skip that part. I'm representing Chile, even though I'm not officially member of that committee. But I know, as you know, I'm a Chilean American, and I know the history of the Chilean official agency very well. So I will read now from my prepared statement. In recent years, Chile has become one of the world's leading nations in the official study and recognition of the UFO phenomenon. UFO agencies or departments have been traditionally been under the Air Force in most countries. In France, as we shall see in the next session, the effort is under the Space Agency. But Chile has taken a novel approach which makes logical sense. Its committee, known as CFAA, which is a translation for Committee for the Study of Anomalous Aerial Phenomena, is under the Civil Aviation Agency, DGAC. In other words, it's like if the FAA, the Federal Aviation Administration, had a UFO department. Chile's civil aviation agencies all over the world that deal with aircraft safety and navigation and UFOs, though not regulated by human governmental agencies, are primarily flying in the air and could pose a threat to aviation safety. Chile has a rich history of UFO cases, some of them highly strange, like an incident involving a group of 7 soldiers and a corporal near Putre in Chile's northern Atacama region, near the border with Peru in 1977, the so-called time warp case of Corporal Valdez, which became the subject of my very first UFO article back in 1977. In the 1980s, Gustavo Rodriguez, an air traffic controller, began to collect cases involving pilots who would call the control tower asking if there was any traffic that could explain lights or objects they were seeing during the course of their flights. There were also incidents involving the scramble of military jets, a situation common to many countries of the world. In the mid-90s, Rodriguez received the support of General Ramon Vega, a former commander-in-chief of the Chilean Air Force and later a senator. I had the opportunity of meeting both Gustavo Rodriguez and General Vega during several trips to Santiago in the 1990s. I gave the general, in fact, a copy of the Lawrence Rockefeller-sponsored UFO briefing document, which I had co-authored, and which perhaps played a small role in marshaling the evidence for the creation of CFAA in 1997. During its first months, however, CFAA seemed rudderless until Air Force General, retired, Ricardo Bermudez, was named director. General Bermudez was the director of the Technical School of Aeronautics, which trains air traffic controllers. And it was at this school, which I visited many times, where the commission was housed for a number of years. CFAA's mission is to, quote, record and analyze all relevant reports concerning UAP, unidentified aerial phenomena occurring within the national territory, on the basis of a serious, objective, and scientific analysis with the purpose of determining any possible risk to air operations. In 2002, CFAA became essentially inactive for a number of years, but in December of 2009, the DGIC, the Civil Aviation Agency, announced that CFAA was being reactivated, and once again, General Bermudez was brought back to direct it, and Gustavo Rodriguez to serve as secretary. The committee's headquarters was moved to a new location at the National Aeronautics and Space Museum near the old airport of Los Cerrillos in Santiago. One of the first things they did was to launch an official website, and I have the URL address here, which is by far the best of all the South American official agencies. The website, I mean. It contains several UFO aircraft incidents with audio recordings of pilot control tower communications, videos, documents, articles, and other data. CFAA has an external committee of advisors, which includes 8 top scientists from the Chilean Commission of Nuclear Energy, Aerospace Medicine at Santiago University, astronomers from the Metropolitan and Catholic universities, a plasma physicist from Santiago University, a geographer and expert on satellite imagery from Chile State University, and 2 psychologists. There is also a CFAA internal committee, which includes experts on operations safety, air control center, meteorology, air accidents investigations, aerospace engineering, and audiovisual. They also have representatives from each branch of the armed forces and the police. On August 11, 2008, the Chilean government passed Law 20,285, known as Transparency Law. In some respects, it works similarly to our Freedom of Information Act. Government agencies have 20 days to respond to queries from the public regarding public records. But in some respects, it goes beyond the FOIA. With the exception of matters dealing with national security and foreign relations, the Transparency Law was designed so government agencies can act in an open and transparent manner, even in cases where they receive no queries from the public. CFAA has fully complied with the requirements of the Transparency Law, and as explained by General Bermudez, quote, "This is the way we deal with the phenomena, openly and freely." CFAA has documented many UFO cases involving commercial and military pilots. One of the more interesting ones, known as the Pelican case, occurred on June 24, 2010, and it involved 3 different aircraft, 2 airliners and a Navy plane called Pelican. As put by General Bermudez at a lecture he gave at the International UFO Congress in Fountain Hills, Arizona in 2012, quote, 3 airplanes witnessed the same phenomenon. 2 commercial planes are approaching Santiago. The military plane is coming 300 miles from the north, and an object is cruising his airway. The pilot reports something he sees camouflaged in erratic motion. In the audio communication, one can hear the pilot saying, "Roger, at this moment I can't see it anymore. I could see a traffic loud and clear. It looked like a cloud, camouflaged as a cloud, but with erratic motion," end quote. This case, as well as another one in Punta Arenas, detected by primary radar in 2011, is important because you have different professional pilots reporting the same object. As explained by General Bermudez, quote, "Think for a moment. If one experienced commercial pilot reports to me that something flew across in front of his airplane, I pay careful attention. But now, if a second commercial pilot reports the same a few seconds later, I become interested. But if a third pilot, a military one, confirms the same fact, I tend to believe it. In this case, do we have 1 UFO close to the airplanes, or we have 2 UFOs? If we have 1, its incredible speed doesn't correspond to anything we have now. 300 miles, like in a couple of minutes. During the same lecture at the International UFO Congress, General Bermudez released a multiple video case taken at the El Bosque base in Santiago, where the Air Force Academy is located, which made world headlines. This was because several videos were taken during an important ceremony for the change of the commander of the Chilean Air Force on November 4, 2010, attended by the President, all the commanders of the armed forces and top brass, the Minister of Defense and other cabinet members, the diplomatic corps, and many other important officials, including General Bermudez himself. The ceremony is popular with the public and widely photographed and filmed because it includes the air parade by all the different squadrons of the Chilean Air Force. It must be clarified, however, that none of the dignitaries or public saw the UFOs at the time. These were discovered later as people began to review the footage they had taken. I'm enclosing an interview I did with General Bermudez published in Open Minds magazine, issue 16, October-November 2012, where he explains the methodology of CFAA as well as many of their best UFO cases, including the multiple footage case of El Bosque. Chile has shown that a serious and open official investigation of UFOs can be conducted in a serious and scientific manner. Some of the ingredients include cooperation among different government agencies, scientific and academic institutions, and even the civilian UFO community. Official and private investigators can and should cooperate instead of fighting with each other. The same model has taken place in other South American countries like Uruguay, Brazil, Argentina, Peru, and Ecuador. Another key component is to establish official cooperation among different countries, since UFOs don't seem to care about national boundaries and are reported widely all over the world. For this reason, CFAA and CRIDOVNI, the official UFO agency run by the Uruguayan Air Force since 1978, signed an official agreement of cooperation and exchange of data in 2012. And we have here with us Colonel Sanchez, who was in fact the person that signed that agreement with General Bermudez. The United States likes to think that it's always ahead in all areas of society. But I'm afraid that this is not the case in the field of ufology. Other countries are moving ahead with an open and transparent investigation of this phenomenon. The unknown nature of the phenomenon itself and the likelihood that it originates not on this earth requires a change of attitude and a level of openness that seems to be amiss in this country. Let me finish with a quote from my interview with General Bermudez. Now I'm quoting him. The official conclusion is that the anomalous aerial phenomenon known as unidentified flying objects is real and is present within the controlled airspace and outside the controlled airspace. It is also present in the sea. We have some reports from our Navy in that respect. It is present everywhere, and therefore it is necessary to share the information in order to have more background and be able to study it more scientifically so that we can give real information to the people and not rely on what is shown in TV and in the sensationalist media. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Colonel Ariel Sanchez, and I think we might need our microphones on. Welcome.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am Ariel Sanchez Ruiz. I'm a retired Uruguay colonel of the Armed Forces, and I belong to the reception and announcers in Uruguay of UFOs that works together with the official Uruguay Air Force that takes care of all the citizens' reports of non-identified objects. I was a technical director, and I have been 23 years researching this subject. I have retired from the Air Forces about 9 months, but I also worked as specializing on air transit, or the specialization of air transit, and a professor of the School of Estado Mayor. I'm also a director of the Center for Exploration of Non-Civil Research of the UFO OVNI locally. Uruguay, in these groups of investigation, has about 1,300 of cases that have been investigated for a long 30 years, with 3% of these cases that have non-conventional characteristics. Uruguay is a small country with only 3,250,000 inhabitants in a land of 176,215 square feet. This principal industry of Uruguay is cattle and raising and agriculture. In 1979, it was created an Office for the Citizens Reporting of Unidentified Objects, most reiterated based on the 1970s, but the first registers started up in 1942. The Air Force is in charge of the safety of the country's air and the safety of the populace and also the passengers and airplanes. It takes care of all the denouncers from all the media reports about what people has been notifying of UFOs. Never in these 33 years of activity, the Uruguay Commando of the Air Force has given any information of the diffusion or stopped the reporting of all this information. Through this commission, we are not rejecting or hiding or changing the situations that have been lived or experienced by the citizens that are reporting. It's only just taking the reports of the citizens. It's only just to make scientific studies about this phenomena that has been also, the Air Force has been researching. A lot of interviews have been done with all these people that were interested in this subject and reporters with the spirit of research and non-bias that could come together to work as a group to maximize all this research. In 7th of August in 1979, 3 officers were nominated for all this recopilation and analysis, and 20 civil researchers were also called into the help. La Criovni is an organization that is a governmental institute, but it works as a public office for military and civil reports. The Uruguay Regional Research Civil Group, that is non-governmental, has the object to compile all the South American groups that are reporting about these UFO views and compile all the details into a bank of information, the results of this idea. In 2012, 2 forces joined Chile had been doing the first cooperation exchange with the international press with all this research. La Criovni would like to use the same type of elements to review and incorporate all the research on these reports. After a few different trials, we adapted all this research as a commission with a president and a vice president and a secretary, and an operative direction and technical, and also to archive and statistics. This commission was created to analyze all the cases before it was created and all the new cases that were coming up and being reported. Some problems were also faced to find conclusions that will be valid to apply to other research. The first problem was how can we investigate? The second problem was how to evaluate something that we don't know what it is. So the decision was to opt a discussion that was open without prejudice or bias to explore the phenomena, to analyze all the studies that will be able to compile all the reports and all the events. First, we started to study the UFOs first and the non-identified objects and anything that relates with it, like the territory, the people, any effects, any objects, animals, or anything that could be in relation to these UFOs and all the revelations that people had been reporting, whether it was spiritual or mystic. We found out that it was a phenomena that could absorb different opinions and different phenomena together into one. Why was this occurring? This phenomena was absolutely unknown, that was presented and causing a lot of difficulties to study. Having the spirit of curiosity and investigation to adjust our studies into the scientific responsibility and a methodology of research to be adequate for this research and evaluation to qualification of the systems. Two pillars were the basis, the recollection of the information collected and the study of the comparative events in the phenomena. The questions asked, where we have people that will interrogate all the details and make conclusions, what possibilities it is that the testimony is not true, and the third, people that would have seen the events, what is the possibility to be a psychological illusion? The questions were negative or partial, or there was any doubt that was reasonable to corroborate with the scientific research. What is the possibility that this phenomena is not conventional? We don't know what it is, but we can also identify the methodology had a possibility of percentage that we don't know what it is and cannot identify. We cannot tell what it is, and we cannot identify with anything known or conventional. Finally, to evaluate all this information, we have a system that will give us the opportunity to corroborate the veracity and filter all the details that we can submit to work together with international groups to work together. And our model of organization, I would like to offer our methodology of working to create an office to study this subject, and we can submit on the United Nations so we can, together with the rest of the world, lift the veil and find out the exact details of what this phenomena is. Thanks.
Thank you. Yes, Anthony Choy from Peru. Welcome.
Muchas gracias. Señor presidente del panel y representantes del Congreso de los Estados
I'm greeting you, ladies and gentlemen, to addressing the panel. Very good morning. My name is Anthony Choy. I'm going to read my declaration. I am a lawyer and a media reporter for investigation. I am the main investigator of the non-identified objects, and I have attended the Ariel War School of Peru and Space for Peru. This I am the main investigator for the official UFO research of Peru, founded on 1st November 1971. I have been investigating for 13 years this phenomena in Peru, and I have also a radio program in Peru, which is one of the most important in Pan America. I would like to go, please, to image number 1, please. Around 7 p.m. on 13th of October 2001, in the skies of this city, there is a city where there is a strange light. This is on north of Peru with the frontier with Ecuador. We're going to see the image number 2. 8 light spheres appear. And then on the right side upper, you'll see intense lights. Color is orange, and dozens of witnesses have observed this. And these lights have been for 2.5 hours, absolutely in silence and forming figures that are geometric alignments. So somehow they were giving a light show for all the witnesses, and then suddenly disappeared. 25th of October, another luminous object about 25 meters of diameter. We can see one of the witnesses pointing to it. Slide number 6, please. It appears hovering in the sky on top of the city. It was accompanied by another spheres of light, one of which landed, quote unquote. So it landed in a nearby hillside. The whole view lasted 26 minutes. This is part of a video that we extracted these images from the video. Just when it landed, the witnesses unanimously, they had heard a greeting on their head. It was like a greeting. They heard hello. And lastly, on November 15th, another red luminous sphere descended on the same city, which after a few minutes, it disappeared.
These events, we should note, were recorded on 3 videos, copies of which we are turning over to the committee so that you can look at them. They were recorded by Ivan Isa Nanfardo, who is a cameraman from that community, and I asked him for a copy so that I could begin my respective investigation. In the media, the case was called the Chulucanas incident. And the videos were turned over to the Peruvian Air Force and given to Peruvian Air Force Commander Julio Chamorro Flores, who is the chief of the Peruvian Air Force's UFO Investigation Office. He instructed me to proceed with my investigation. The investigation thus was able to document statements from dozens of witnesses. However, they were also able to confirm very significant events, that most of which were unfamiliar to people around the world. And this is something that many investigators need to know. South America, perhaps right now, is the area where there are the largest number of sightings. It is surprising how the world, even the United States of America, are unaware of this situation. I think much of this has to do with the role of the media. And just as a matter of example, and I'm going to point out a few of these cases. In 1959, during a military training flight of a squadron of 4 P-47 planes near the city of Chulucanas, Peruvian Air Force Captain Ernesto Arancibia Linares had an encounter with a UFO that shut down his plane's engine, kept it hovering in the air for an hour, and during which time Captain Arancibia states that he had an encounter and communication with the alleged crew members who, based on his testimony, official testimony, seemed to be humans with Nordic features. Captain Arancibia reported this to his command, but his command never made this public. Okay, can we see slides 9 and 10? This is retired Captain Arancibia right now, and this is an illustration that he drew, his description of this UFO that he saw hovering in the air for an hour. And now we'll see our slide number 11. In 2002, during a nighttime military training flight in the area close to Moropon, very close to Chulucanas, Peruvian Air Force Captain Germán Schrock Castillo and another pilot, after receiving a report from a commercial flight and flying at an altitude of 12,000 feet, detected an unexplainable perfect circle outlined by fire of an immense diameter of between 15 and 18 kilometers. No explanation for that phenomenon could be found, nor was this ever revealed to the public. In 2004, and now we'll see image number 12, a team from the Univision television network in Denver, Colorado, traveled to the area to work on a news report on UFOs. And on August 6th of that year, at approximately 1:33 a.m., this team was able to record a video of a strange object flying over Cerro Pilan,
causando extraños disturbios en el funcionamiento del equipo de filmación. La imagen 14, por favor. El 19 de noviembre del 2002 se realizó una reunión en el cuartel general de la Fuerza Aérea del Perú, entre miembros del alto mando y miembros de las direcciones de inteligencia y de información jefaturados por el subjefe de Estado Mayor, Mayor General de la Fuerza Aérea, César Cortés Mancilla. En esta foto podemos ver al equipo de investigación de la Oficina OVNI de la Fuerza Aérea en esa época. La siguiente imagen 15, por favor.
The Colonel José Ratti, from FAP Airspace Director of Peru, representing the Peru Air Force, the first official UFO case that was recognized to all media of communications, the initiative, we must recognize the courage, action of Peru Air Force to dedicate time to open up this information, being the third in Latin America group to report this incident, the city of Chulucan. The archives of this report have been inexplicably stolen and are missing from FAP, the official UFO reporting agency in Peru. In regards to this UFO case,
tuvo la importante y valiente iniciativa de abrir una oficina de investigación del fenómeno OVNI en el Perú, la tercera en Latinoamérica, como respuesta a la creciente presencia OVNI sobre el espacio aéreo peruano. Lamentablemente, la única investigación conocida de dicha oficina es el incidente Chulucanas, que ante la presión de los medios de comunicación se convirtió en la primera investigación oficial sobre un caso OVNI en ser divulgado. Luego de dicha investigación, trascendió que la DIFA sufrió los robos inexplicables de sus archivos. Si bien está considerada en el organigrama de la institución,
the archives have been missing.
Inactiva y silenciosa.
We're going to see image number 18, the testimony of the people seeing all these events in Peru. It's mostly on the Peruvian territory. A very, very, very long history of my country, Peru. In Cusco, this is the photograph that's been taken. This is a very significant event. Peru is one of the 6 places that for 6,000 years that we have human inhabitation. The Mayas' ancestry, but exists also evidence that there is pilots that have encounters in space, that they have shown a completely unknown performance in the airspace. But they have been turned down for informing anything in regards to this event. 1980s, my colleagues and I, we commenced studying this events. My presence here is to confront that United States and other regions of the world are not willing to acknowledge this phenomenon. But this requires a global response in regards to the research of this phenomena. These events and these UFOs that are originating out of the earthly space, and the performance of these non-identified objects and phenomena, and the citizens that are reporting, witnessing. We are in front of one of the most important mysteries of the contemporary time. This is a simple and powerful event. The interaction with other civilizations of the world and learning about our visitors. They are influencing our society in present times. We are immersed in a process of preparation to open up all these phenomena. It's about 60 years that this phenomenon has been studied in my country. But the governments are protectionist or interested in not disclosing the information pertaining to this phenomena of unidentified objects. And also the reporters, they are abandoning the spirit of research instead of reporting the real truth. But in our planet, we have an obligation to comment about this and research. We sharing with other civilizations that are of world. In the meantime, the healing of our community in regards to this.
Thank you very much.
Events.
Thank you. And next we have Colonel Oscar Santamaria. Welcome.
Good morning. A cordial greeting and thanking the Commission, and my thanks for inviting me to present this information. I'm Mr. Huertas. I have been a combat pilot of Peru's Air Force, and I would like to present a document of the U.S. Department of Defense. Please, first image. You can see that here, this document was a 1982 document that was produced by the U.S. Department of Defense. They're informing in the near of the La Jolla, at south of Peru base, there was in several opportunities a UFO reported, first in the morning time, the second time in the times of the evening of the next day. The UFO that appear in the morning, an airplane, SU code 22, try to intercept it and destroy without being lucky in the objective. It was ineffective to try to destroy this UFO. Second page is more details about this event, given the name of the base and all the details pertaining. The pilot that was driving, I was the pilot that was piloting this airplane, and I will be very happy to narrate and explain the events that occurred. I was the pilot in this airplane, trying to intercept the UFO. in the area base of La Joya in the department of Arequipa in the south of Peru, 11 April 1980, in the morning. 1,800 people, civil and military, that they were part of the base, could observe at the end of the landing strip an object that looked like an aerostatic globe suspended in the air about 5 kilometers of distance and 1,500 of altitude. The system of radars did not detect this globe approaching, and this object did not respond to the tower of control messages. This was a restrained location that was not allowed for except for military. So we thought it was an espionage for this military base, and it could be considered a danger for the security of the country. So the squad was ordered that one of the pilots did have to go up in the air and follow the object and destroy the object. The air command gave me the order to take off and to shoot this object before it approaches too fast to the base. So I fast approach this object, and this airplane that I was piloting had military weapons. I did an ascent from the right to the 1,500 kilometers of height, and I initiated the attack procedures where I was close to the object. I threw away a charge of missiles, but this globe never got any damages and started ascending and living in a very, very fast pace. The next, please. During the persecution of this globe, I had 900 kilometers per hour speed, but I couldn't reach him. When I arrived to 84 kilometers of distance from the base, this globe stopped very quickly. I had to make a very quick maneuver to avoid confrontation. When I wasn't getting close to shooting again the distance, the object did a very fast movement and went underneath my airplane without allowing me to shoot. In several occasions, evaded my location and avoided on the last minute on my intent to shoot. When confronted with this situation, I took the decision to speed on a very high velocity and ascend very high to go ahead and attack in a very vertical manner. But the globe did have a maneuver of lifting up very, very quickly, so I wasn't able to focus to shoot. The next view. I accelerated my airplane to get to 1.6 Mach, approximately
1,850 kilometers per hour, and I began to ascend. I surpassed the position of the balloon, and I hoped to be able to be high enough to get into my attack maneuver. But I was surprised when the balloon, again, quickly ascended and was able to get alongside my plane. And therefore, I was unable to attack it. With the UFO parallel to my plane, I kept going up, hoping to be able to surpass it, to be able to get into attack position. But I was unable to do so. So we got up to 19,200 meters, about 63,000 feet. As you can see here, where the balloon stopped its ascent, and I tried to again get it in my sights to be able to fire, but it was impossible. At that point, my low fuel light came on, saying that I had just enough fuel to get back to land. Since I could no longer continue my attack, I approached it, got to a distance of about 100 meters, and I was able to see that this balloon was not a balloon. It was about 10 meters in diameter, and on the top, it had an enameled, a non-metallic cream-colored enameled dome, and that in its base, it had a wide silver circular metallic surface. It did not have any wings, jet propulsion, windows, antenna, anything like that. These are obviously surfaces that aircraft usually have. Pulling myself together, I went back to the air base and I reported to the control tower what I had seen. In total, there were 22 minutes of maneuvers that are clearly etched in my brain, and I am convinced that there is extraterrestrial technology and life. I will never forget what I saw that day. And this is a sketch of what I saw. If you could go on to the next slide. It more or less looked like this. And the two next slides, we can see, oh, this is a photo of me with my plane. This is from 1980. Next, please. This is a Sukhoi 22. Thank you very much. That's the end of my remarks.
That must have been some ride. Wow. And then we have Alejandro
Chionetti.
Chionetti.
Alejandro Chionetti. Sí,
Okay.
representando a Argentina.
Welcome.
Se puede pronunciar Chionetti también, como quiera.
Well, it is a great honor to be here with you, members of Congress. I do not represent any official Argentinian group. I'm here, I am a news producer for the third largest Spanish channel here in the United States and have been here for many years, but despite that, I have not stopped investigating my dear country of Argentina, and I thank you for this great invitation. I'm happy to be here on behalf of Argentina and other countries. So these UFO investigation projects are nothing new. In my life as an investigative reporter and field research, I've investigated many cases that were investigated before and after the event by official groups or through subsequent historical reviews. From my very early childhood, I was a part of a civil investigation group that sought cooperation with official entities, and we, these special and noble species called UFOologists, in the 1980s, my group, the UFO Investigations Commission, or CU as it's known, which is directed by Dr. Joseph Allen Hynek, who is a recognized astronomer and advisor to the Blue Book Project. It chose us as representatives of this organization as editors of its bulletin in Spanish and the International UFO Report. At that time, Hynek was seeking international exchange, and the timing was perfect. We brought him to the National Commission for Space Studies called NIE, with the hopes to reinvigorate our efforts and help this phenomenon to be taken seriously and receive support in the investigation of recent cases like the crash that had happened in the north of Patagonia. Investigations in Argentina began with Navy projects, and then later they went to the National Gendarmerie as well as the Air Force. Official projects began to gain support in the 1960s. There was the famous case of Captain Niotti that I was able to investigate research years later in Yacanto, a province of Córdoba. There was a sighting of a conical-shaped object on a foggy morning, and it was photographed clearly, and it was analyzed by the National Aeronautics Service. They concluded that there was a dark part on the underside of the object was showing absorption of light or radiation. This was one of the first speculations about the possible energy aspect to UFOs. I'm not sure if we actually have a copy of this image in my PowerPoint. If it is there, we can project it. If not, we'll continue. My first contact with classified archives came through my friendship with journalist Eduardo Ascuy, who was one of the first advisors to the Navy on the naval projects. In the 1960s, the Navy was on alert for the apparition of submerged objects that were not detected by sonar. They moved at high speeds. Sometimes they would fly, and they were in the form of like a cigar. We called these unidentified submerged objects, or USOs. These cases were pursued with the support of American ships, and they helped in the research. Unfortunately, there are no declassified documents on these cases. The first official group of the Navy was called COPEFO, which was the Permanent Commission for the Study of UFOs, and it was led by now late Captain Omar Pagani. Years later, in the Argentinian and Chilean bases on Antarctica, there were multiple sightings. It was a multicolored disk that led to magnetic disturbances in the detector's radar on both bases. In 1965, personnel from the Deception Island, also in Antarctica, were able to take a single photo. This was with underwater volcanoes. In terms of the chronology of acknowledgement of official cases, I made a list of declassified cases. The 70s were a particularly busy time, but this began in the 60s. In 1962, a fighter plane squadron from the Espora base, which is outside the Buenos Aires province, detected UFOs on the landing strip, and they made an attempt to intercept them. In 1965, the same thing happened in that same area. And this is an area that is very dry and hot, and there was a great concentration of sightings in the 60s. In 1978, there was a very interesting case in El Dique de la Florida where a UFO landed, and there was a humanoid who exited. There were a number of witnesses to this. And the next year, I met with some of the witnesses, and the police of the province provided an official communique where they talked about the prints that were found on the ground from that being. And that year, the provincial police published a document where they showed a giant UFO that actually had an impact on the train rails. In 1982, in Catamarca, which is a province, in a town that's curiously called London, and that happens a lot on the Falkland Islands, but the police saw an object that had showed a deflagration that produced great destruction. The chief of police issued an official report, and and I was the only investigator at that time, but I arrived after the event. In 1986, in Córdoba, in Cerro El Pajarillo, which is one of the communities in El Uritorco, Cruz de Eje, there was a print that seemed to be the crash of a UFO. The regional authorities accepted this case as one that was strange and one that needed to be investigated. In between 87 and 89, a commission was created under the armed forces, and it was led by a great friend of mine, Julio Gosena Aguago, and it was very important. In the province of Entre Rios, there was a phenomenon of UFOs that would actually have an impact on the ground, and I had the opportunity of taking video and investigate this over several years. In 2009, Argentinian investigation groups were united under a single association called CEFORA, which is the Commission for the Study of UFO Phenomena in the Argentinian Republic. It included scientists, investigators, and members of the military, and they sought to access in a methodological and systematic way the secret archives related to UFOs. One of the first groups that was being pushed by this commission was the support and acceptance by the Argentinian Air Force, which decided to create 3 years ago CEFA, which is the Commission on Aerospace Phenomena Study. This was under the leadership of Captain Mariano Mojapt and a few civilians. They have investigation brigades like Carlos Ferguson, Carlos Urchuk, and Andrea Simondini. The second phase, which continues today, is under the guise of Commodore Guillermo Aloy. The first official investigation took place in September of 2011 when a glowing ball fell from the sky and led to a lethal and tremendous explosion in Monte Grande, which is in the province of Buenos Aires. This case remains unsolved. It's alleged that it could have been a gas explosion, but the public and civilian investigators continue to rule that possibility out. There was great destruction, and one person was killed in the course of this incident. With respect to UFOs, this Air Force Commission has clarified that its work is not focused on probing the existence of extraterrestrial life. Rather, it is a scientific study that can lead to the truth. CEFORA has continued to ask for the declassification of documentation on this case and the previous cases. There's a case in Bariloche, Polanco. This was a case of the Argentinian airline where the pilot saw a UFO that attempted to land in the Bariloche airport. The object, it went in front of the plane and took an escape route. The crew was very frightened, and all radio signals and communication with the airport were cut off. At the same time, there was a general blackout in the city, and a gendarmerie plane saw the danger of the situation at the same time. So CEFORA was able to get transcripts of the communications between the aircraft and the tower. However, it has not been able to obtain the documentation prepared by the gendarmerie. Although they have recently begun to declassify cases like the case of Campo de Mayo in the province of Buenos Aires from November 1972. At this time, an object in the shape of a half moon, which had a light of a smaller size underneath began to make emergency maneuvers. So Sephora is currently in talks with different ministries for UFO declassification. One is the Ministry of Defense, under which the Air Force and the Navy fall. The other is the Ministry of Security, which includes the National Gendarmerie and the Prefecture. Sephora has brought together more than 1,000 citizen signatures for the presentation of a bill before the House of Representatives in the nation and the executive branch and the Ministry of Defense for the declassification of these documents. Obviously, this is being supported by other civilian groups. There are many, particularly young people who are following these investigations. Young people with a lot of energy and who have united behind the declassification of this. So you can see Argentina is part of South America. We've had some very interesting cases that have been striking internationally. Many investigators, as I noted before, Jaime and some of the other international investigators, we believe that some of these cases, these rich cases that are very strange but are reliable, there have been reliable sightings, could bring new elements to the fore. I remember Dr. Hynek always told me that perhaps we'll never know about this phenomenon fully in our lifetimes, but it's worth the sacrifice and energy we are investing in our investigations. Our work, our task is to compile information so that scientists in the future may be able to shed some light on this phenomenon. And in conclusion, with regard to official investigations, over the last 40 years, military entities have studied UFOs with scientific care to separate misinterpretation, natural misinterpretations, and the difference between science and nature, things that cannot be explained. The position of these agencies has not changed much since the 1960s up till now. And I am a living witness to this. I have spent the past 36 years investigating these UFO phenomena, not just in Argentina, but in Latin America and the world as a whole. But we continue to believe that our elegant universe, it warrants the benefit of the doubt that this phenomena may or may not be extraterrestrial, but we still need more proof. Reading between the lines, we know that many of these official organizations, they don't say it or write it, but they believe that the phenomenon could, in fact, be extraterrestrial. The Argentinian armed forces and their scientific commissions have never openly declared that the phenomenon might be extraterrestrial, but rather they let people read between the lines. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and I want to thank all of you. We're going to take a short break, and then we will come back and have questions. So what do you think, 15 minutes? 15 minutes, so if we can be back at 11:15, that would be perfect. Thank you. Thank you very much. This meeting will come back to order. I am going to start out to my right with Congresswoman Woolsey, and this will be the time to ask questions of our witnesses.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, witnesses. What a morning.
What a morning.
Good morning, but what a morning.
What a morning.
There is hardly any way to deny, unless you are all sitting here making up stories of how absolute your proof is to what's going on beyond our own Earth. And so thank you for that. That was good for all of us. My first question is to our wonderful pilot, Chionelli. No, I mean Santa Maria. You're Peru, you're Argentina. What I want to know is, do you have, I think it's to the gentleman at the end of the table, do you have any kind of a formal relationship, your UFO group, with your Argentina government, and what is it, the Argentine government, and what is it, and how does it work, and what can we learn from that?
Well, all the groups in Argentina, the civilian groups, create a Sephora, and Sephora had been is unite researchers for many years who were my colleagues and close associates. Some they were disciples of myself. I started researching UFOs many years ago, and we always look for the classification as from the 70s to now. The group found the cooperation now of the Air Force through the Minister of the Defense, and through the executive power of the nation. We are waiting to kind of unify that motion. Now it's working also. We have a petition in the Congress of the nation. We have with executive power and also with the Minister of Defense to have release documentations from the past. For there were projects, as I said in my speech. I don't know, maybe the translation was not so good.
No, it's good.
Okay. Of these projects, anti-projects, not only to release, also to have cooperation. To have cooperation and what the field researchers, we always work alone with no mediums to get to the places, to do good analysis. We really, the groups kind of prevail so many decades with the lack of technical support to do analysis. We have, for example, since the 2000, we have the phenomenon, for example, of the cattle mutilations, which is a very serious, we know through Linda Moulton, her research.
And
for example, the groups need support. It's not only to have the classification of documents who could give light for scientific analysis and to see what happened also in documents and cases, the Army forces and the Air Force and the Navy research between 1960, as I explained, and today. But there were recent cases too, as I said, in 2011 was this big explosion.
Well, I know you need the information. Are they giving it to you, or are you just helping them?
The classification started slowly, yeah.
Yeah, but it's actually happening.
It's happening right now, yes.
Yes.
It's happening now.
Thank you for sharing that with us. Thank you. Colonel Santa Maria, I can't imagine your experience. There's so much, I mean, I felt like I was sitting on your shoulder when you were telling the story. Afterward, how did your government treat you? Did they take your information and take it seriously? How could they not? But did they? And did you see any life in those UFOs?
La superficie dell'OVNI no permitía ver nada.
We could not actually see into the UFO, not through the ceramic part or the metallic part. As regards the government and the Air Force, the 1,800 people that actually saw it and the commanders that were there, we reported all of this to the Air Forces, but there was no negative repercussions because it was officially accepted. The sighting was officially accepted, and I continued to fly for 20 more years without any problems.
So how did the press handle this? And I mean, what was their response?
El año 80 que
In
ocurrió el evento,
1980, when this event happened, this was a year that on that air base we were installing a Civil War
otras organizaciones.
we were installing Soviet materials or Soviet installations at that place, and the UFO did not actually get to fly over the base, and so really we received the order to not talk about this because we didn't actually want any curious journalists to come and actually research and investigate this, because we had sensitive materials on the base and we didn't want to attract any undue attention. And so it was 22 years of silence until the Air Force officially gave us permission to talk about these phenomena, and that's at that time when they said that we could actually start to speak publicly about this issue. And as I said, they finally gave me the authorization to talk about this.
And did the press come back by belittling the effort, or did they acknowledge it and support it?
The media started to talk about this secret that we had kept for so many years, but they didn't really know how to get access to the information from the Air Force offices, and so the media occasionally would interview me or request an interview just to try to get the word out about this, but it was so many years later that there wasn't a whole lot.
Okay, thank you very, very much. Mr. Gevaerd.
Yes, ma'am.
Can I take these off?
Yes, yeah, I will speak in English. Yes.
Thank you. And believe me, it's because I'm limited. You referred to American military in the Amazon. How soon did that happen, and what's the relationship there?
The facts that I described happened in the 70s, in late 70s, in 77, and Brazil was, like many other countries in South America, under military dictatorship. And during that period of time, U.S. military and intelligence were all over South America, ruling lots of things there. Now, when Operation Saucer took place, and it happened because the populations of the affected area couldn't live anymore because they were seeing UFOs all the time, and worse than that, they were being attacked. Over 1,000 people were attacked during a certain period of time. There were lots of injuries made by this object that would come from the sky and emit a beam of light towards people's body, making them faint and become anemic. Now, the situation went so intense that the community leaders went to the governor of the state of Pará to ask that something is done about it. And the government asked the Brazilian Air Force to start an investigation to give answers to the population, to the society. Then it was established the Operation Saucer to investigate and to engage the extraterrestrial intelligences, because there was already, and this is in the documents, there was already a knowledge that there was an intelligence beyond that phenomena, and that phenomena was not earthly. Now, when Operation Saucer started as a military operation with all the military system and style, during its procedures that lasted 4 months, and the way it was closed is very interesting. But during this 4 months, U.S. military, U.S. intelligence were visiting those areas and taking part of the operations during the Operation Saucer. And they were talking to the witnesses during the day and sky watching the night with full equipments to try to detect and film the UFOs that were being seen. Now, it was said to me by the commander of the Operation Saucer that at the beginning, in the first weeks, only a few sightings took place. But after the Operation Saucer went on and on, the objects would come more and more boldly and to the direction of the areas where the military were camping.
So, was the U.S. military part of that saucer project with you?
Not officially.
Were they at the table?
Not officially. They took part in lots of procedures, including, this was told to me by the commander of the Operation Saucer himself, Colonel William Gevaerd, that they were having problem in documenting the UFOs with photographs. Some UFOs were hard to photograph, but they solved this problem when the U.S. military came to Brazil and gave to the Brazilian military some equipment and highly sensitive films so they can not only photograph the UFOs, over 500 pictures were made, and also film the UFOs. 16 hours of film were made of including motherships over the Amazon River.
So do you have any idea of whether or not that information and those films were shared here in the United States?
I don't have that information.
Mm-hmm.
I truly believe that.
Would it have been all right? I mean, was there some embargo in their relationship with you that would say you can't take our information back?
No, I think that the whole thing about the cooperation with the Americans is that they take the information back to the United States.
Okay.
You know, they were there to collect information, as they were in Argentina, in Chile, in so many countries, to get information about those phenomena and bring back to the United States to use for their own purposes.
Well, thank you very much. So, Mr. Huneeus, you mentioned that the traffic control group, I mean, was housed in the Air and Space Museum.
Currently, yes.
Oh, okay. But it started out in another...
Yes, the Technical School of Aeronautics.
Right.
That was the office initially, and...
Well, when you told me that when you told us that it had been taken from one area to another, when I heard museum, I got a little concerned that it was saying this is all past and you're not going to be working on
no, what it is,
future.
it's not in the museum itself. It's in the Museum of the Aeronautics. It's in an old airport. It used to be the main airport, Los Cerrillos, but what happened, like it happened in many cities, the city grew too much, and also was done when the runways were smaller. So eventually, the airport, or Los Cerrillos, is no longer functioning as an airport, but they're still using the hangars and things, and they created a museum. But the facilities of the committee, the CFAA, are annexed. But it has nothing to do with the museum.
So it worked for convenience. It worked for you.
Yeah.
All right.
They also have an office at the main headquarters of the Civil Aviation Agency. Mm-hmm. But according to what General Bermudez told me, they'd rather be at that other place, he said, because when they are in the headquarters, if they have to make an official presentation or something, of course, they can use that facility. He said, everybody's asking them questions. Oh, what's going on with UFOs? Have you seen any? So he said, we're in the other place, nobody bothers them. They can work quietly and do their job.
All right. I thank you, and I thank you all. My time is up.
Thank you. Next up, we have Ms. Kilpatrick.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I wasn't going to start with you, Mr. Trabb, but I think I will. I think you're the first that I've heard in 4 days who said the presence of the others actually attacked people that caused the Operation Saucer project to come into existence. Is that right?
That's right.
I don't think I've heard that before. Certainly haven't heard it in America. Matter of fact, it probably happened. Doesn't mean it didn't happen. We just haven't heard it reported like that. What year did Operation Saucer start?
I'm sorry.
What year?
Oh, it started in September 1977.
And how long did it
And it
last?
ended on December 1977. It took 4 months only.
Okay, okay. And you also mentioned in this, from Congresswoman Woolsey, the U.S., did you say they took your information and you were waiting to hear back from them? Or something you were saying about, I don't know if maybe you supplied the information from Brazil in this instance, and then they were to report back or something? I don't know. What was your relationship with the United States of America? And this is for all of you all. The information on your presence, your UFOs, your whatever that's being called. What relationship, if any, did you have with the U.S. government, and did you forward or share any information from your country with the U.S. government?
Me personally?
No, Brazil.
Oh, Brazil, of course.
Brazil, all of it
Well,
for your country. I mean,
see,
for your country.
Yes, there is a common sense that the U.S. government is acting in many places of the world.
It's what?
Is working, operating in many places of the world, collecting information about this subject. It is reported that the U.S. military have been to several countries collecting information about UFOs. Now, we just saw when Commander Santa Maria presented his case, a document that shows that the U.S. intelligence was getting informed of what happened in La Jolla Air Force Base in Peru. The same thing happened in Brazil. During many years, we have had U.S. military coming down to Brazil and taking part of investigations of UFOs. And it's not only in the past, like 4 or 5 decades ago, but also in recent cases.
Okay,
now,
stop. Okay, that's sort of. Can each of you respond to that? Mr. Huneeus, we'll go right down the line. Just want to know what relationship, if any, does U.S. have with your experiences and your acts of what we're discussing this week? I mean, do you automatically give it to them? Is it because we have military bases there? Is it because you may get appropriations from us that you must share this? What reason and what is that connection?
In the case of the CFAA, in fact, General Bermudez told me that when they created the office back in the late 90s, they contacted the American government, I guess through the embassy, because they wanted to have some kind of formal relationship. But there was no response.
They did not respond. What
No,
year
but
was
they
that?
do, that would have been probably late 90s. But they do have an agreement with not an official group, but it's called NARCAP. I think it stands for National Aviation Research Center for Anomalous Phenomena, something like.
Located where?
Well, it's run by a former NASA scientist, a very serious man called Dr. Richard Haynes, and he is an expert on aviation cases. He's a longtime NASA scientist, very serious. So he's lectured. He's gone to Chile. They have very close relationship because he's an expert on aviation cases, and the CFAA is run by the Civil Aviation. So. But NARCAP is not an official agency of the U.S. government.
It sounds like a nonprofit of some sort, and we've had
Correct.
some testimony here to that effect on our U.S. side that would probably equal that.
Correct. So the other thing is what my colleague Gevaerd was mentioning. If you study the American declassified UFO files, which are extensive, you will see a tremendous amount of documents, especially back in the old days, but there's still some more recent, collected by various agencies, usually through the Defense Attaché Office, or sometimes by the CIA. And it's obviously that these people are, monitoring the international aspect of UFOs. And
does Peru get information back from the U.S. regarding any of what you send them?
Well, I cannot speak for Peru. In the case of Chile,
Chile.
There might be
Chile.
some at the level of intelligence. They probably do,
Chile.
but then that is not revealed publicly.
Okay.
You see, what General Bermudez wanted was to have a formal.
I understand.
But because of the transparency law, that would have had to be revealed publicly. So the U.S. just never responded.
That's Brazil, Chile. Colonel Sanchez, could you respond?
En el caso de Uruguay no tenemos ninguna relación de intercambio con Estados Unidos. No existe.
Exchange relationship with the United States.
Do you share any of your information as you testified to us this morning with U.S. or any nonprofit or other entity that may not be government Do you share any of that with the U.S. government or a nonprofit or an agency here in our country that would know what Uruguay has experienced?
No, con ninguna agencia
No,
civil
not with any civilian or military agency or U.S. government agency. There is no sharing or exchange of
Thank you very
information.
much. Dr. I want to say Choy, is that right? No.
Bueno, en realidad,
Well, the truth
una de
is
las cosas que uno puede
that
concluir
one of the conclusions you can draw after having heard the testimony of all the witnesses is that the UFO phenomenon is one of national security, and therefore the intelligence element is extremely important. As far as we understand, in Peru, there is no open, formal, public agreement, but there are indications that show that some of this information is shared with U.S. security agencies. There's no open public documents, but there are witnesses who have noted that in the 80s, apparently a UFO fell in the San Mateo de Huancho area, and they said that there were Americans who were in that area. And I do want to remind you that in the Greer Disclosure Project, there were people who made statements, gave testimony that stated that there was a U.S. Sergeant, Jonathan Wangan, who said that a UFO had crashed in northern Peru and that there was extraction, and this was according to testimony that they took some of the remains of this fallen UFO. They were taken away by helicopters that were definitively not part of the Peruvian armed forces.
Excuse me? They were not part of Peru, taken away in helicopters. What country was that? Who took them?
De acuerdo al testimonio
Based
del
on
Jonathan Wangan, que está
the
dentro del
testimony
Project
from
de
this
eran
Stephen Greer's project,
aparentemente aparatos
apparently
norteamericanos,
they were
porque
American
fueron extraídos
helicopters,
y llevados a los
and
Estados
because
Unidos.
then that these materials were taken back to the United States.
I'm going to change for Colonel Santa Maria. You're a brave man to go up and down, back and forth, zip, zip, with something you don't know what it is, and you're trying to shoot it. That's pretty brave. I'm going to commend you for all of that. You did get away clean and free and healthy. That's a good thing, and thank you very much. I'm not sure I want to ask you that same question. I do want to go to Argentina and ask the same question. Do you, Argentina, share either with government or non-government organizations any of your experience, any of the things that you've witnessed to us today with the United States of America, either through its government or other nonprofits or unaffiliated?
Pretty sure I am sure there's some kind of no open communication, but it's possible. But officially, I don't see any kind of document or interaction between
the two. Okay.
Argentina government and
nothing official.
U.S. agencies, officially. But regarding, we were talking, also was a very interesting case I researched in the decade of 70, 78. There was a UFO crash between Argentina and Bolivia. And supporting what Dr. Choy said, was an object who produced a kind of destruction of a hill, was a kind of cigar shape structure of not identified. And the Bolivian government studied, the Argentinian wasn't limited, didn't investigate, but that object was retrieved by Americans' helicopters too.
Stop.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. You have no relationship with them, but in that instance, and in other instances around the table,
border,
we have been on the scene at some of your current experiences.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Goes back. I want to go back to Dr. Choy for just a moment. Your point was well made in terms of national security. So, do you all in South America share your information and experiences and enhance or whatever your national security because of what you see and how closely you live together? And just one person, I don't know.
There is an agreement at the level of military. In all South America, they share information about a wide variety of subjects, of items, and UFOs is one of them. It has been confirmed by top-ranking military in Brazil and in other countries. It means, in the military level, which is it's independent than the politics. There is.
Did you say independent of politics?
Of politics, because presidents can come and go,
right,
but the military stay. And as they stay, they have to have a channel of communication among themselves, so they can talk about interests of each other on off the
That
the
applies in
continent
this
itself.
country too. We just don't acknowledge it as such. It does.
Simply that.
Presidents change, but the military-industrial complex is alive and well and
Yes.
continues so. Yeah.
Right. I'd like
Okay,
to add
wait
that.
just a minute. Just one last question. I've got 1 minute. So therefore, South America, I believe this is an international issue and that we ought to go back to our Congresses and others, but I also think we ought to have UN presence, and there's been some. Will your countries help the citizens hearing on disclosure go to the UN to ask for their help in this subject, and will your countries help petition us with that?
Yes.
Yes, of course. It's what we want. We would like.
You didn't say it. You didn't say it. I want to hear it. Okay, that's good. No. I think that's good. That's what we want to hear.
Because
Thank you.
these official agencies, they want a place where their data can be shared officially with other countries, because the UFO phenomenon, by definition, is global.
Right.
Like I said, they don't care about national boundaries.
They
That's
care
our
about
problem.
national security, though, and technology. So, I mean, it's got to be a way to do it, I think, and you all may know better, and so certainly more people in this room know better than I.
Well, that is the problem, because as you know, in Congress, I'm sure you've dealt with many issues dealing with intelligence and national security. There's all kinds of things going on under the rug, you know. I mean, informally, intelligence agencies, they have their own procedures, but those are not made public.
Okay, stop, please.
Yeah.
The United States of America knows of your instances. You all said that, most of you. They don't tell us. They know yours. And then they make mockery of it as not doesn't
because
exist.
the U.S.
Okay,
government
my time is
doesn't
out. I
acknowledge.
yield. I yield back. I know, but we got to get to what we got to get to. I want you all to know, and I commend you for all that you do and that you work together. But if our military gets your information and does whatever it does with it, and I hope to make a better world and a better global presence so that we all might live the next 50 years, that we also work together to do that. I'm not so sure. Some work with you and some don't. We got to open it up. We got to address it, or there will be no universe. You all understand?
Sure.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Representative Cook.
Thank you. Chair, I'd like to turn to Colonel Santa Maria for a moment. This Department of Defense memo that's stamped in June of 1980, that was, I guess you actually showed this up on the screen, also is attached to your testimony, or your story, I should say. And then, of course, you testified about this. Is this memo referring directly to your experience that was indeed, as someone's already said, very dramatic and had what we call here, and I think everywhere, the wow factor to it? Is this the memo that relates to, that's to you? And are you prohibited from telling us or something? But it sounds like this happened in April. This is something with the June stamp on it. It looks like our Joint Chiefs of Staff. Confirm, if you can. The Joint Chiefs of Staff of the United States of America have made these comments, or at least received these comments, from Peru. And we have this in writing as a document that talks about these very experiences of shooting at UFOs, with the statement, I have to say here, that the source has been known as credible before in all respects. In other words, what you experienced was not even questioned by people, and copies of this, CIA, a National Security Agency, I could go on, I mean, is this a smoking gun or what for trying to open up some files here in the United States? I mean, but now I want to hear your answer. Because it sounds, well, whether it was you or not, something very similar to what you said happened. It looks like in April or May, so I'm thinking it might be you they're talking about here. Go ahead.
El año 2007, en este mismo
2007,
edificio,
in
fui
this
invitado
same
para
building, I was invited to take part in a conference on the declassification of documents. There was a journalist, Edwin Kane, and there was a filmmaker, James Fox, who was making a documentary. And they turned over a copy of this document to me, and they said, "We would like to invite you to our country because our country has accredited this encounter." And so when I reviewed the data in 1980, the only encounter with a UFO was my encounter. And so the date of this memorandum was about 28 days later. So there were no other occurrences at the same base. So I believe in the sharing of information, you can see that this was the event being referred to.
Well, thank you. And I just want everybody in this room to hear that even though, again, we have a humble observer that doesn't like to in any way overstate anything, that was a really strong yes to my question.
It was.
And there's no other way to interpret that. And I appreciate that. And I have to say, since the way you described this, and the fact that you actually shot, I'm going to use the word bullets. I know that that's not the right word. I'm not much in knowledge of Air Force weaponry and so on, but you shot at this. And are you a good are you a good target? Are you a good marksman? I don't know the right word to use.
He's not a target.
No. Obviously, you shot at this. And would you repeat again what happened?
Well, these were 22 minutes of this relationship where we went up and down, and we went around. It was trying to avoid me. I was pursuing it, and I was trying to fire. When I first fired, these were bursts of 30-millimeter shells. So they're about 3 centimeters wide, 25 centimeters long, and they can destroy a truck, a single one. And there were 64, so it was just a barrage of fire, and nothing happened at all. And that's what was so surprising. Now, if the possibility of not hitting my target, it was practically impossible. I've won awards for marksmanship. So I have won some shooting contests, and so they were like, "Hey, you're the one who needs to go up there. You're the one who needs to chase this thing." And
I just don't want you to be quite so humble in the way you're explaining this, please. Because he took a little too long to say, hey, he wouldn't really have missed this. Now, he didn't say it that way. He said it more carefully, but there's no question. You wouldn't have missed it based on everything you said and based on how those 30 caliber shells, as you described, would have taken out a truck. I mean, you didn't even have to be a great shot, but they picked you because of your ability to shoot at something they were worried about coming in on the airbase. Am I correct? And I want you to continue with your answer as far as what happened after you shot the way you did at it.
Well, so I shot these bursts. In our training, we are always firing on 3 meter by 3 meter targets. And in this case, this was a 10 meter by 10 meter objective target. So, I mean, the possibility of missing was 0. I mean, these hit the object, and when it started to move away, I put on my post-combustion so that I could chase it, to maneuver, to try to get in position. But it's this mental exercise of how am I going to do this? And when it was moving away, I thought, how is it doing this? How can I better attack it? So I tried different positions until it came to the point when it had supersonic speed. When it would go up, I tried to get in my sights vertically, but when I moved to the side of the UFO at 1.3 Mach, the UFO, which was stopped, it achieved 1.2 Mach in a question of seconds without any engines. This is something that nobody, no craft can do, to just go from 0 to 1.2 Mach vertically to reach my same position. This is a UFO that knew the way our aircraft worked, because it was able to anticipate my moves and then follow me. And then once I landed, I met with intelligence officers, and we looked at all catalogs to see what possible spy objects this might have been. But they all had some type of engine. There was nothing similar to what I had observed. So this was an unidentified object, and we were unaware of any type of technology on Earth that existed. Will you allow me to make a comment?
Please, Mr. Choy. Yeah, I'd like to hear Dr.
Quizás
Choy.
por la...
Since you're from Peru, of course. Go ahead.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much. Perhaps because the commander is so humble, he has not expressed certain details, but I wanted to share something that I believe that you should know and I should underscore.
If I could interrupt you for one moment, I would ask the colonel to nod his head yes on any detail where either yes or no, just to make sure that he's, because I agree. One of the problems is you have not a problem, in my opinion, but you have somebody that does not like to in any way bring attention to himself or overstate his own abilities or what he did. Just description that's undenied by our Joint Chiefs of Staff was just amazing. I just want him to confirm what you say, because I do want to believe that it would be useful to this panel to have him acknowledge anything you say that would add to that. Go ahead.
Una de las cosas que se ha deslizado
One of the things that
en los días pasados
we have heard in previous days is the possibility that many of these UFO events are due to earthly craft. But in the case of Colonel Santa Maria, we can prove that this was not any technology we see here on Earth. In the military terminology, there was a wall of fire, basically, that he came up, that this object came up against. There's nothing on Earth that could defend itself against that, specifically in that time. Not even up to date, not because it was able to only defend itself, but as the Colonel stated, you asked him what was the impact that it had on that. There was no impact. It absorbed all of these rounds. It actually absorbed it. That is absolutely impossible for any Earth or any technology that we have here on Earth to be able to absorb that type of barrage.
If I could interrupt you for just a moment and say, do you agree with the 2 or 3 important points there that Dr. Choy just made?
Yes, I do agree, because over time we have talked about the possible situations and the different perspectives that exist. Obviously, I fired, and there should have been some sort of impact, but there was nothing. There was the bullets didn't even explode. There was no explosion of the barrage of what I was firing.
Okay,
so
thank you very much,
and
I'd love to continue with this, but I do need to ask another question here with just a minute on my time left.
We have 1 minute left.
That's right. That's why I said I'd like to go over here to Colonel Sanchez. Your system in Uruguay that apparently has been in existence for 33 years, you say, that to track and keep track of anything that's sighted. It's called, I can't remember the operation name of it, or the, excuse me, let me grab my notes. I was so mesmerized by the previous testimony. But the system you have, where you outlined the 5 or 6 steps to even get qualified to be seriously looked at, and then tracked as far as any UFO sightings that your organization in Uruguay keeps track of. Do you have records of things similar to what we've just been talking about with Colonel Santa Maria? And I'm not sure if Peru and Uruguay, they do have the same language, don't they? Well, you obviously heard everything anyway, but through these translations. So I'd like to know anything that might be in that, that kind of talks about this sort of thing. And since I'll be out of time, if you keep your answer somewhat short, but go ahead.
Sí, efectivamente nosotros
Yes,
hace 33
we,
años
for the last
tenemos
33
una
years,
comisión
have
de la
had
Fuerza Aérea
an
que
Air Force
presenta ante la
commission
opinión pública todo
that
lo
also
investigado en materia
is accountable
de
to the public
objetos
on
voladores
all
no
issues
identificados.
dealing with
Esta comisión
UFOs.
está compuesta por
This
civiles y
commission
militares
also has
y
military
sí
and
tiene
civilian
un
members
archivo
and
de
also does have
1.300
archives of
casos
1,300
investigados, del
cases
cual
that
hay
had
un
been
3%,
investigated,
unos
3%
39
of which
casos,
there are
40
39
casos
or 40
que no han
cases
podido ser
now
resueltos
that
por el
have
nivel de
not been
extrañeza,
solved because of
y
the
los
level
clasificamos como
of
casos no
bizarreness
convencionales.
that
La
they
Fuerza Aérea Uruguaya
presented,
estudia desde el
and
punto de vista científico
Uruguay
el tema
has
UFO,
scientifically addressed the
no descarta la
UFO issue
opción
and does not rule
extraterrestre,
out the
pero para ello
extraterrestrial element.
necesitamos
But for
evidencia,
this, we do
evidencia
need
científica. Sí
scientific
tenemos casos
evidence.
como
We
el
do have
coronel
cases
Santa
such as
María
that
con
which
aviones
Colonel
de
Santa
combate que
Maria
han perseguido objetos voladores no
mentioned,
identificados,
and how
y
fighter jets
hay
were
dos
scrambled
casos
to
de
chase
personal
these
militar que ha abierto fuego en tierra, no en el aire,
these objects, and
contra,
how there was a chase,
esferas
an in-air
luminosas
chase,
que en
and
algún momento
following
se
glowing
acercaron a
objects, and
polvorines en
sometimes they
bases
would get
aéreas militares.
close to, and how these objects would get close to air bases throughout
Thank you so
throughout
much
Latin America.
for that information.
Thank you.
A wise course, by the way.
Thank you.
Trust but verify.
Senator?
Thank you. I'd like to start with our colleague from Brazil.
Yes, sir.
You mentioned that the government responded from an investigatory point of view to the apparent violent attacks that took place in the Amazon area, killing people. Now, that's the first, at least that I'm aware of, anywhere in the world, where an aggressive attack resulting in loss of life that was the product of a flying saucer extraterrestrial effort. Could you elaborate a little bit more specifically on the investigation that was made over the death of these people?
Yes, sir. We don't know for what reason that took place, but that happened. During 2 or 3 years, like 1976, 77, 78, we had casualties, at least 4 casualties. And we have a record of 400 people attacked. Not only people, but also animals were attacked by these beams of light that would come from these balls, these spaceships. Sometimes they were referred to like a can with a windshield and 2 persons, 2 human-like creatures inside of it, operating that spaceship. This has been described in detail by lots of people who live in the area of Salgado, especially in the island of Colares, which is 60 or 70 miles from the city of Belém. And this has also been reported by the military. Now, the very interesting thing about it is that when the military decided to camp there and to conduct their investigations, the attacks stopped. Very rare attacks took place in other areas, but not where the military were. And also, when the military decided to change their camping from one point of the island to another point of the island, the objects that would be hovering those previous point, that previous point where the operations were taking place, would move to the other area, like it in the own words of the commander of the operations officer, Yolanda, like if these intelligences knew what the military were doing in that area. That's very amazing. These are only 440 pages of a total of 2,000 pages that were produced as a result of the Operation Saucer. I would like to address this to you. I would like that you have time to examine this, because this contains very hard information collected in a military fashion by military men on duty investigating UFO in a confidential, not top secret, but confidential, sometimes reserved operation by the Brazilian Air Force in the Amazon.
Has the military who've been in charge of this investigation, have they been transparent with the public in Brazil?
As I told before, on that days, we are under military dictatorship, so there wasn't much transparency.
Presently, after the dictatorship left.
Yes. The gentleman that conducted the Operation Saucer, the commander of it, was a captain at that time, and he retired as a colonel. And 20 years after the Operation Saucer was shut down, this man called me and invites me to his place, to his house in Rio de Janeiro, where he was living. And I spent 2 days with him, interviewing him extensively, where he gave me full details of everything that happened during those 4 months. And he also described me how he and his men had a close encounter with the creatures that came in those objects. And that actually, this main encounter with an alien creature that took place in mid-December 1977 was what caused the Operation Saucer to be shut down. And in my reading of it is because the Brazilian military wouldn't know what to do if this contacts, open contacts among military and extraterrestrial start being regular in the Amazon. What we can do now. So then the Operation Saucer was shut down. But just to add a few more pieces of information, that it was only, as to say, shut down to make pretend, because the Operation Saucer then became, in a second level, much more secret and was conducted for several more months under military, U.S. military command in Brazilian territory.
Well, I think you partially answered the next question, was that was there a U.S. presence interfacing with your military in the investigation of these UFOs?
Yes, sir.
You have documentary evidence of that?
I have the reports given to me by the commander of the Operation Saucer that he interacted many, many times with Brazilian intelligence agents members and U.S. intelligence
Which would be the CIA.
That will be the CIA and also military. They will be all over the Amazon looking for the same kind of information that we are looking for about who are those intelligences that pilot those machines.
Do you not find that somewhat bizarre that our government now officially says that there's no investigation that we were involved with, no documentation?
I would say that is more than bizarre.
Okay. Let me move on to my...
See, even our government is admitting in a far extent that there has been official investigation. Now, we started in Brazil in 2004 a movement, a campaign called UFOs Freedom of Information Now, to request to the government to open its files. And we have succeeded. It's the only model like this in this planet where the society have asked its government to come clear about it, and it came, at least partially, because we have got from 2008 to 2010, not only 4,500 pages of UFO document, but also like 300 to 400 pictures of UFOs. This is all given to the society. Has all been put in the National Archives. Anybody can go to the National Archives in Brasilia or in Rio
Let me ask
and
a question.
see this.
Was there panic in the streets when this was revealed?
Not at all, not for a single minute.
So the people were mature enough to accept this knowledge?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Let me go to my friend from Chile. Do you have any knowledge of American military presence or intelligence presence interfacing with the officials in Chile gathering information on UFOs?
Not really, except if you look historically, some of the FOIA documents released by the CIA or the defense, usually was the defense attaché office, that they would, if there was a very important case, they would send those guys to collect the information. But so historically, in some of the release files, there are occasionally some documents about Chile, but not recently. So I have not seen. And like I said, General Bermudez, the head of the committee, actually wanted to have a relationship, but he wanted to be open and official.
And
so,
we didn't want that.
No, we didn't want that.
So that says a lot. With respect, and you've drafted or you've worked with Danny Sheehan in drafting a resolution that can come from this body trying to refer this matter to the General Assembly of the United Nations.
Yeah, because there has to be a mechanism, like I said on the first day in this hearing.
Could you circulate that document as soon as possible to the members so we can begin to digest it? Okay.
Okay, although we have really not, this is a kind of thing that we
realize
need to
it's
discuss,
a draft.
but we will give you the draft.
Yeah. We're all very sophisticated in dealing with drafts and first writings, but we can massage something as long as we have something in our hands.
Okay.
Let me go to my colleague from Uruguay. Did I understand you correctly that your system of investigation has been transparent and open to the public from the very beginning? Did I understand that properly?
Sí, eso es correcto. De hecho, es correcto. De hecho, Uruguay ha publicado a través de esta comisión un libro que yo traje aquí para mostrarles con más de 20 casos de Uruguay, casos oficiales, escrito por el primer presidente de este grupo, el coronel Eduardo Aguirre, que escribió este libro hace 11 años. Fue publicado para que el público se mantenga informado de toda la actividad
so that the public could follow all of the ufological activity in Uruguay. There are also press conferences, and the information is even taken to the schools to talk to them about this and even educate them on this issue. This commission is made up by both civil and military members. It has a work methodology that is designed or that was adopted in 1979, and this methodology was also shared with China.
You just said that this was brought to the schools so it could be educated to the young people of your country. Is that correct?
Sí, correcto.
Yes, that's correct. The UFO issue is something that everybody likes to hear about, especially young people, at least in Uruguay. And they request the Air Force, they request that the Air Force go and give talks to the kids. And they go to many different places.
My congratulations to you.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you.
I think I still have some time, don't I?
You have 1 minute?
1 minute. Quickly, Dr. Choy and Colonel Santa Maria, when the U.S. helicopter, retrieved the materials from the downed UFO aircraft, was there no reaction to a violation of your sovereignty by the United States of America, or do you just accept these kind of violations as a matter of course?
Bueno, en realidad esta información Actually,
this information, well, we just recently learned about this based on the disclosure project that Stephen Greer carried out based on the testimony that a military official, Jordan Winka, provided. This was circulated in the UFO groups in Peru. It never made it to the press in Peru. And the press is the same here as it is in Peru. They don't really talk about it. And so the media generally try to cover up any type of thing like this. And so there's so the government doesn't really give importance to this, and they just say, well, we're just gonna keep it in the corner here, and they're just gonna say that there wasn't a real invasion of sovereignty.
You should take a page from the Uruguayan approach to the issue. Colonel Santa Maria, who gave the order to shoot? Was that your own initiative, or did it come from higher headquarters as you were selected and taking off?
La orden fue interceptar y
The
destruir.
order was to intercept and destroy.
Era un objeto que posiblemente venía a ser
Because this
espionaje
is something
no
that
debería
could
llegar.
invade our airspace.
That's right. That answers my question. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think my time has expired,
Your time
so I
has
can't get to
expired.
Argentina. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And with that, we will go to Representative Bartlett.
Thank you very much. First, I want to apologize for my tardiness. This is National Day of Prayer in the United States, and for a long time, I had been scheduled to be the main speaker at a county-wide National Day of Prayer breakfast this morning, and so I fulfilled that obligation, came here so soon as I could. We have your testimony then. Thank you all very, very much. While our military and our government is saying that there's no such thing as no possibility of a UFO coming from another world, they of course admit that there are UFOs. UFO simply means unidentified flying object, and the Air Force says that in their Project Blue Book, there were 701 of them that they couldn't wish away some way or another. So they do admit they're unidentified flying objects. They simply are denying categorically, I think, that they could be of extraterrestrial origin. But while they seem to poo-poo the whole thing here and relegate it to the ha-ha corner, they apparently are aggressive in participating in investigations of USO sightings in South America. And I'd just like to start here with Mr. Gevaerd and go down the table. Have you tell each of us briefly, is this true in your country and to what extent?
Yes, it is. Actually, I'd like to take this opportunity to speak about crashes. It has been said here in this table and during the precedent years, days, that crashes of UFOs have happened. Most of them in old days, but there is at least one recent crash, and it took place in Brazil in 1996. It is called the Virginia case, in which an alien spacecraft crashed and at least 2 creatures were captured and offered no resistance to its capture, but they died right after they were captured. And this procedure were taken of rescuing the debris of the UFO and capturing the creatures were taken both by the fire department of the city of Virginia with the Army personnel of nearby headquarters. And in the next day, the following day of the capture, we already knew that U.S. intelligence and U.S. military, and as well as U.S. doctors were sent by the U.S. consulate in São Paulo to the city of Varginha to follow the procedures. The doctors were sent, medical doctors from the United States, to follow what was being done about the creatures, because they died and nobody could explain how were their morphology, how they function. And we know for a fact, because this is a very well documented case, that has been investigated by at least 70 UFO researchers, including UFO researchers from the United States, as Dr. Roger Lear, Dr. James Hertog, and the deceased Dr. John Mack from the Harvard University. They have been to Brazil. They confirmed what the UFO researchers from Brazil discovered. And we know for a fact that at least one of those two creatures were taken to United States by U.S. military. And it was taken in one of the Buffalo airplanes that serve the U.S. embassies and consulates in South America. When it came back to United States, it brought back to here one of the creatures and part of the object that were rescued, that were retrieved by the Brazilian military.
Yes. Well, in Chile, I don't have really much information about other than what I said earlier, that there were some documents, from the CIA, but they tend to be old. But I do want to bring up a case that was mentioned by my colleague Chionelli, which happened in Bolivia, and we don't have anybody from Bolivia here, so I'll speak briefly about that case because I'm familiar with, and it's a crash too that took place in Tarija. Which is on the border of Bolivia and Argentina in May of 1978. In this case, we do have some documents, not Majestic 12 type documents, which are controversial, but these are officially released documents under the Freedom of Information Act, including a telex from Secretary of State Cyrus Vance at the time. And also Air Force officers from the Defense Attaché Office under a project that was called Project Moondust, which is well established that existed, which was for the recovery of space objects. I mean, that's how this started. As soon as the space age took off, in 1957, then the Air Force created this project Moondust for the recovery of space debris. But according to one document, they list space debris, and in those days only two countries had space projects. That was the United States and the Soviet Union. And then it says unidentified flying objects in the same document. So when this incident happened, two officers from the Defense Attaché Office, which were stationed in La Paz, the capital of Bolivia, somehow showed up in this remote area. And unfortunately for them, as they were coming in the airport, they were photographed by a local reporter. And the picture, you can see them, they're trying to hide their faces, but there they were photographed, and the picture was published in the press. So the cover story is that they were on vacation. But that's not a type of city you go on vacation. Number one, they were not with their wives, so obviously that was a cover story and a pretty bad one. Nevertheless, this was in a very remote area. We only have probably a very partial file from the US. There's only a few documents. I'm sure there's plenty more. Where the case gets a little murky is as to whether something was really retrieved and taken back to the US, or it may still be there because it was in an extremely remote area and there had been like a landslide on a mountain. There was an expedition initially by the army, by the Bolivian army, under a lieutenant, and they finally got to the area, but they didn't have the equipment and the facilities to do something. And there are some rumors that something was retrieved and taken to the United States, but then according to an American reporter who did investigate this case, his name was Bob Pratt, he's now deceased, he thinks that they never did retrieve because it was such a remote area, so that object might still be there. But again, it shows that there is an interest on the part of the United States, and we have uncovered some documents, but there's probably much more.
Thank you. Colonel Sanchez.
En el caso de Uruguay, en
In the
materia de
Uruguayan case,
investigación
as
UFO,
regards the
no existe
UFO
ningún
investigation,
intercambio
there is
con
no
Estados
official
Unidos.
exchange with the
Los
United
únicos
States.
intercambios que
The
hemos
only
hecho con
exchanges
Estados
that we have
Unidos
had
ha
with
sido
the
en la
United States have
recuperación
been,
en el año
it was
2011
the recovery
de
in
un motor
2011
Star
of a
48
Star
de un cohete Delta II
engine
que
Delta
cayó
II,
como
which
chatarra
fell
espacial
over
en
our
territorio uruguayo.
airspace.
Personalmente fui quien
I
recuperó
personally went
ese
to
objeto,
recover
pero en
that
materia
object.
ufológico
But
hasta el
as
momento
regards
no
UFO
tenemos ningún convenio
issues,
de
we have
intercambio,
no
ni hemos hecho
exchange agreement
intercambio
with
con
them,
Estados
nor have
Unidos
we
nunca.
carried out any official exchange with them.
Dr. Choy.
Bueno, en el caso de mi país,
In the case of my country,
se maneja a dos niveles.
I
Hay un
understand
nivel
that
que
this
es un nivel
this
público,
takes place
en el
at two
cual la
levels.
oficina
The
de
public
la
level,
Fuerza
in
Aérea
which the Air
funciona
Force Office is
como
in charge
relaciones
of this
públicas, pero
through the
entiendo
public
que hay otro
relations, but
nivel
I
en el cual
understand
sí
that at another
hay
level
intercambio de
there
información.
is unofficial
Y este es
exchange of
constante. Eso se
information,
puede
and this
ver
is a
porque
constant
luego
exchange of
estas noticias
information. We can
llegan
see because
a los Estados
afterwards
Unidos.
we can see the
En cuanto
information
a
does make
caídas
it
de
to the United
ovnis,
States
sí
when
se-
there are
ya los dije
UFO
anteriormente, en el
crashes.
caso del comandante
For example,
Jonathan
in the
Huerta,
case
de los
that
Estados Unidos,
that we mentioned
este caso de San
before,
Mateo de Huancho en el
the
año
San
80,
Mateo
en
de
el que
Huancho in
lamentablemente no existe
1980.
documentos porque se
Unfortunately,
maneja
there
a
are no
nivel de
official
secreto,
documents.
pero sí a
Everything
nivel
is
de
at a secret
muchísimos
level,
testimonios que hemos
but we
recogido.
have received many testimonies on exchange of information.
Colonel Santa Maria. Comments, please, on any participation of our either intelligence or military or any other part of our government in investigations of UFOs in your country.
No conozco que haya
I'm
habido
not
participación
aware of any
oficial para ver
official
ovnis,
U.S.
pero la cadena de
involvement on the
inteligencia
UFO issue,
siempre
but we do
comparten
know
sus
that in
informaciones
the
entre los
intelligence
países,
exchange
así
there
como
is
el
an
Interpol, me
exchange of
imagino.
information between the
Siempre
intelligence
a un
bodies.
evento nuevo se comenta
Anytime there's
entre
a
ellos
new
para
event,
estar
there
actualizados.
is an exchange of information to update the intelligence communities on these issues.
Mr. Chionelli.
Yes, well, regarding, as I explained to the Senator, in matter of ufology, on research, I'm not aware of any documentation exchange between Argentina and United States. But regarding to other agencies, as NASA, well, NASA has in several cases of Argentina is a place where it's a lot of space junk, it's a lot of debris, satellites coming from international, also other countries. And I researched many cases where many debris coming, but different kind of procedures. In the case of NASA, yes, they asked for particular cases if they were part of American missions, and it was a few cases of retrieval, yes, but we were talking about only space debris.
Oh, thank you. It's very interesting that there's apparently a different attitude on their part if it's outside this country. Within our country is total denial, but if they really believe that, then they wouldn't be participating in these investigations in South America. Mr. Gevaerd, you have mentioned that Operation Saucer was shut down. Is that simply because it then went underground, then went secret? They continued the investigation, but secret now?
The main reason why the Operation Saucer was shut down was because there was an actual contact among the military, William Jolanda, the captain that was commanding the Operation Saucer, and an extraterrestrial creature. It took place on mid-December 1977, and as part of his duties, the commander of the Operation Saucer has to go back to his commander, a brigadier in the city of Belém, and report weekly what was going on during the Operation Saucer. And when he did that week, then when he informed to his superior that he had an actual encounter with a creature, 2 arms, 2 legs, a body, a head, with a helmet that came from a UFO 300 feet long that almost landed close to the Guajará-Mirim River. When we reported that to the Brigadier Protásio de Oliveira, his commander, then William Jolanda was given order to shut down Operation Saucer and return all material and bring all his men from the jungle to the city and give it all the material, all the information. Then we realized, we knew, I've been seeking information about it for quite 20-some years. I have gathered lots of information about it in my pursuit for details of this, that the Operation Saucer changed its name, changed its personnel. All those 3 dozen men that were commanded by William Jolanda were taken off the scene, and the new personnel took the operation under a different name and under U.S. military command from several months after December 1977.
Thank you. One quick question to Colonel Santa Maria. What would be the...
You have less than 1 minute.
Less than 1 minute. I saw that. Thank you. I saw that. What would be the arguments for and against the suggestion that what you were dealing with was kind of like a giant hologram rather than something physical? Your bullets had no effect on it. I'm just asking, if that was the argument, that could it have been a kind of a giant hologram, what would be the arguments for that? What would be the arguments against that?
Holograma difícil por
Well,
la
it'd be difficult for
característica
it
de
to be a
estar presente,
hologram
visto de diferentes
because
ángulos.
I saw it from
Y
different
uno
angles.
cuando se desplaza y
And
podría
when it
cambiar como
moved,
holograma, llegar
a
a 30.000
hologram
pies
could
con la
change,
misma firmeza de los
it could
colores.
change
bien
shape,
difícil
but the
para esa época.
colors
O sea,
were very
era un
solid.
objeto real,
It was a
no
real
virtual.
object. This was not a hologram.
It's an object that we can't understand if, in fact, there was no effect of bullets on it. I'm just curious about, we're dealing with phenomena here that we cannot explain in terms of our physics and so forth here. And I'm just wondering what the various options are. Thank you all very much. Or we can have a second round after additional questions.
We will probably have a very short round.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. One question per person, however. Thank you very much for being here today. Great testimony.
Thank you.
I would like to hear from each one of you what's the attitude? Here it is, well, if you believe in unidentified flying objects, or you believe that there's spacecraft that comes in, there's been such a damper by both the press and our government about believing this. I mean, you're sort of made fun of if you look at this and say, yes, this is real. What's the attitude of both the people and your press? And we'll start with Mr. Joran.
Thank you. This is definitely not a matter of belief. There is a lot of data that has been produced by civilian UFO researchers, military UFO researchers, a very few but very dedicated scientists for the last 60 years to confirm without any question at all that we are being visited by several species of more advanced, at least technologically more advanced civilization that come here, and these objects that they design, they construct, like a Boeing does this, its airplanes here, they must have something like that in their planets, and they visit other planets in the universe. It is as simple as thinking what we are doing presently. We are at this very moment on Mars, on Moon, taking photo of satellites of Uranus, of the rings of Jupiter, of whatever. We are exploring our backyard. The difference is that our technology presently only allow us to explore this backyard. But if we're doing this now, in 2013, in 20 years, in 30 years, in 50 years perhaps, we will be able to do interplanetary trips with crews inside our spaceships, safely, effectively, go and come back. So if we can do this in the near future, and we are working on that, definitely, this advanced civilization that started the evolutionary process much before us, they are doing the same. And they may have been doing the same for quite some time, perhaps hundreds of years, thousands of years, we don't know. The universe is so full of life, and the variety of this life, in the formats and levels of evolutionary process, it's just unthinkable for us at this point. But we are grasping the surface of this. We are doing history here. We are doing what we are supposed to do, to question and to whatever we find out, take to the society, make the society know that we are being visited. Because we may very well, at any point, receive their visitation in an open and frank way. And the world has to be prepared for that. It's not out of question that one day we will exchange with them, we'll engage, we'll live with other societies from other planets. It's just a matter of time. Thank you.
Thank you. Antonio?
Yes. Well, you're asking about the social attitude of the public and the press
Yeah.
in Latin America. I would say, in general, it is much more open than in the United States. Whenever there is an important UFO case, it gets covered in mainstream newspapers. So it would be like here being covered by the Washington Post, by the New York Times, but seriously, or at least semi-seriously. I mean, there is some ridicule, of course, but not as bad as the US. The scientific community, on the other hand, has been very conservative, generally speaking, in Latin America. I would say that there might be more scientists quietly doing research in the US than in Latin America, although that is changing. Now that they see these official commissions, then that gives them some cover.
Right.
If some general that is attached to the Civil Aviation Agency asks professors from the universities, then that gives them cover. But in the past, it was curious to see that the press and the general public and the governments were more open, but the scientific community was more closed.
Interesting.
They were just afraid, maybe, because the peer pressure is always bad. And one thing that General Bermudez told me, which I found it very interesting, is that he said the pilots, the airline pilots, were very cautious. Normally, because, in the past, airline pilots, they never wanted to report UFOs publicly because it may affect their career.
Right.
They don't want to be known as the UFO nut, you know that. So he said they're trying to condition them that it's okay. I mean, after all, this committee is from the civil aviation, and these are official forms. But he said they're still, it's easier for them from the military pilots, because if their commander tells a military pilot, here's a report, you fill the form, then officers follow orders, right? But the airline pilots is still volunteer. But the fact that this agency is with the civil aviation, that is also changing. And of course, because they are with the civil aviation, that's their primary source of information. Usually comes from pilots who are, in the course of their flying, they're seeing something. They don't know if that is another air traffic or is something else. So they will call the control tower, says, well, I see an object, in that corner. Do you have any air traffic? And then usually the control tower, well, in some cases they probably do, and then that's filed away and it's not a UFO case. But in other cases, they don't. So then the control tower says, no, we have no scheduled traffic there. And these communications are recorded and preserved. In the old days, probably they were erased after a while, but now they're preserved. And then there's official reporting forms that the committee gives them, and then, but it is still up to airline pilot. That part is still volunteer, whether they want to fill the report or not. So they have to be conditioned. But they're being conditioned by the government, so hopefully that will change.
Colonel Sanchez?
Yo quería decirles
Well, I wanted to tell you that the Uruguayan Air Force does not rule out the hypothesis that these are extraterrestrials. This phenomenon is one that we've seen occur in Uruguayan airspace. It could be different probes, something else, but we need scientific evidence to prove it. That's why our commission works using scientific methodologies, but we do so through the Air Force. I believe that people's attitude and the media's attitude in Uruguay are very respectful, given the fact that for 33 years, the Air Force has been spearheading UFO investigations in Uruguay. And so I believe that the Uruguayan people have reliable and transparent official information and understand that. The situation in each country is different. In the case of Brazil, United States, these are massive countries with large tracts of land and very sophisticated defense systems. It's not the same in Uruguay. Uruguay doesn't develop develop weapons. We don't have special aeronautic or space research. So I think that's why there's greater acceptance. However, in the case of the United States, it's something that we all know. Defense is very important, and so they have to keep some secrets when it comes to sharing information. I've heard people mention over these days that these UFOs could be a new prototype of an unmanned aircraft, and that might make things difficult for the Department of Defense, or especially for companies that build these, Lockheed or Boeing. And that's why I believe that there are greater reservations, and I think that that's natural in terms of sharing information, as in terms of what's been flying around out there. That's at least my personal opinion.
Thank you very much. Yes.
Yes, you were talking about how about believing or not in UFOs. I support what our colleague from Brazil said. It's not a matter of belief, it's a matter of information. The information is out there, and over these 5 days we've been talking about it very openly. However, and I'm struck by the fact that how this is addressed in the United States. They underscore the fact that these civilizations are potentially aggressive, the nuclear aspects of this. That's very interesting because we don't look at it that way. It seems like that there might be politically correct extraterrestrials, because they might be offensive in some way. But in Peru, when we hear about cases of encounters, we have very credible testimony of people who've had contact in many different cases, but it's always been with civilizations where there have been attempts made at engaging and having communication. If you look at the case of Santa Maria, where there was this quote-unquote clash, and where all of the ammo was fired, you would expect a response from the others, but there was none. It seemed like it was like a cat and mouse game. And if they wanted to destroy us, they would, clearly with their technology, they would have been able to do that, and they haven't done it. So I think our approach is very different. It's not, we look at superior technology, but not in military framework. But there are many visits that we're receiving. We have to look at it. Unfortunately, we haven't been able to explain it scientifically yet.
Thank you very much for your comments. Colonel?
Yes, just with respect for how the media treats us when there's a UFO case. I've worked with many airlines and crews, and I would say that starting in the 90s, pilots talk very openly about experiences that they've had, what they've seen, what they've heard, because, again, nobody makes fun of you or laughs at you. It's very normal now to talk about sightings, and that doesn't have any impact whatsoever on someone's career, and I'm very pleased that that's the case.
In my experience with Argentina, I have 3 decades as a journalist, international, and I saw evolution. When I started, the media was more kind of aseptic, and was hard to be interviewed, was hard to kind of open this Pandora box of the subject. But I saw it's all over the world, the scene is changing. For example, with series as the History Channel, Ancient Aliens, or UFO Hunters, the people is kind of totally more open. Today, for example, we are discovering planets similar to the Earth every day in the news. It's incredible how the astronomy and the exobiology is every day in your breakfast table in the newspaper. And that attitude also help with the UFOs too. And for example, regarding with the pilots, it's interesting how the Latin American pilots are so open. Every time I travel, I go to the cockpit to talk with the pilots, and the pilots have experiences. Different to the United States, who the pilots are more shy. I said, what happened? We have only activity south of the border and not here?
Yeah.
It's interesting. See, sometimes I feel ridiculous asking, but I always go also to the airline I travel in, United American Airlines. I said, no, they don't talk too much. But I think it's a totally paradigm shift. It's a shift now, in all levels of consciousness. And I think it's positive for the new generations. When I was growing up as a ufologist, my own family was kind of, so, oh no, he liked these subjects, and they were not kind of accepting that, also the media. But I think it's totally a new hope for all of us.
Thank you very much. I think we have time for one question from each panel member, if you have one.
I have a question, and Dr. Choy was absolutely my straight man on this one. My question is to you, Colonel Santa Maria. There was a phenomena in the surprise that the object, the UFO, was not attacking back. And would you respond to that?
Yes, it was like a peaceful attitude. When I began to attack it, it evaded the fire, but it never did I feel a threat that it was going to respond by attacking me. It's simply when my fuel was out, I just approached it and saw that it was an object that was unknown to me. I just went to see what it was, and I had to turn my back to return to the base. I thought, I don't know, maybe it's going to start chasing me now, but nothing of the sort happened.
Thank you.
Representative Kilpatrick.
Thank you, Madam Chair. To Colonel Sanchez and Dr. Choy, what kind of scientific information do you seek that would verify the phenomenon?
Well,
we in theory have no idea what it is we're actually investigating, so we use scientific methods to conduct our investigations. I can say that in 1993, we saw two luminous spheres hovering over a field in the interior part of Uruguay, these luminous spheres that measured about 30 or 40 centimeters, no more than that. They left prints where scientifically, through laboratory studies, we saw a diminishment of phosphorus, zinc, and magnesium. So samples were taken from where it had touched the soil. We saw there were 8 different tracks there, and again, there was a reduction in phosphorus, zinc, and magnesium. We continue to use scientific methods to investigate in an attempt to see if this was reminiscent of any type of other interaction we've seen, or because of the color, the energy, but we don't know because we don't have anything else to analyze. However, we continue to work on projects that have been underway for several years. We're working with Norway in an analysis of lights that have been seen hovering over Uruguay, over dams in mountainous areas of rivers where there have been witnesses. We have photographs. We're trying to conduct a film and photographic analysis. And again, we're also working with Chile on this. We have a written agreement between the Uruguayan and the Chilean Air Force in the sharing of information and data. And Uruguay and Chile have a joint investigation of UFOs on Easter Island.
Thank you.
In my particular case,
En el caso mío, cuando trabajé en la Fuerza
When I
Aérea
was
Peruana,
working with the
colaboré
Peruvian
con
Air
ellos en
Force,
esta
I
oficina
was
OVNI.
cooperating with them
Definitivamente el enfoque
in their
era
UFO
una
office. The
investigación
focus
seria,
was on
formal,
serious,
científica.
formal,
Nos dieron
scientific
cuestionarios a los cuales
investigations.
debimos
We were given
interrogar la manera como
questionnaires
hacerlo,
that showed us how
cruzar
we
esta
were supposed to
información con
interview
otros datos
people, then we had to
meteorológicos,
cross
etcétera.
this information with weather
Pero en el
data,
caso que esta
etc.
noche, esta mañana
But
hablé acerca del
this
incidente de
morning
Chulucanas,
I was talking about the
definitivamente
Chulucana
estos
incident.
fenómenos de esfera de luz
We saw
se
these
movían de manera
spheres of light
inteligente
that
porque
moved
interactuaban con las personas.
intelligently because they
O sea, cuando los
interacted with the
testigos querían
people.
acercarse,
The
ellos, las bolas se
people,
abalanzaban sobre
when they
ellos.
saw,
Cuando los
when
testigos
people
se
tried to
retiraban, las
approach,
esferas
they saw the
regresaban a su sitio.
spheres approaching, then going back to where they were.
De acuerdo a la ciencia
And so
convencional.
it defied conventional science, and we sought explanations. We investigated for 3 years and saw the only way of understanding this phenomenon, again, escaped traditional scientific canons, that it was possible that we had to look for new possibilities. And in a conference, I was saying that the only problem is if it's 73 million light years away, how do you continue to analyze it? And in 2010, there was a home in Lima, the capital of Peru, where there was a phenomenon where things started flying, floating around, things exploded, and there was a cell phone from the home's owner. It was found in another house, and 25 people saw how that particular cell phone disappeared from one house and appeared in another house. And it wasn't that it flew from one place. It disappeared from point A and reappeared in point B. This is something like teleporting from science fiction, but it had witnesses. People call this paranormal phenomenon, which is like almost like a cuss word in sciences, but we have to look at ways to try to understand these phenomena.
Thank you. Representative Cook?
Yes, Colonel Santa Maria, I'd like to ask you, so that we can do due diligence on any possible other explanation or hologram explanation, for example. Could you tell us what your air squad commander ordered you to do that day? How many people on the ground witnessed the globe as you've described it initially as about 600 meters above the Earth, at about 5 kilometers away from the base, and particularly interested in how long, at speeds that you described as 1.6, up to 1.6 Mach speed, you did this, you kept this globe in your sights.
Cuando el globo
When this balloon observed, there were 1,800 people who were in our morning formations, and so they visually saw this globe. Radar had not detected it, and I was ready to fly, and so I got the order that there's an object that's not responding to radio communications, it's not on the radar. We thought it might be spy equipment, and it was in restricted airspace for civilian flights. So I was given the order this could be a spy object, and so I was given the order to pursue it. And so if it did not move away, that I was supposed to engage it with fire. So 1,800 people witnessed it, but 400 people were in combat positions that if it started to attack, that they would intervene. So as I fired and it moved away from the base, the other 400 kept their position. They remained on standby. And they saw that it moved up in the air and the object moved away. So I chased it. I think it was 1,800 people who saw this very clearly.
Thank you.
Senator?
I have no further questions. I just want to congratulate the panel coming forward, because you have added a very unusual dimension to what we've been trying to prove, and that is that our government has not been straightforward with the American people. So thank you for helping us prove that case.
Representative Bartlett.
Our chair has asked 2/3 of the question that I was anxious to ask. And the question I was going to ask was, would you tell us, just go down the line and tell us the attitudes of your people, your press, and your military and government? And you've asked the question about the people and the press. So let me just ask the question, and I want just a one-word answer from you. Where your military and your government is on a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is open and accepting and investigative, and 10 is denial and ridicule. Our country is pretty close to 10. Tell us on that scale where your countries are. Just a number.
Just a number. Being 0, total openness.
Yeah,
and
1
10,
or 0,
ridicule.
total openness, right, yeah.
I would say we are 3.
3? Pretty good.
2, 3.
Okay.
Well, after this, the Foz do Iguaçu letter and the recent meeting at the Ministry of Defense in Brazil 2 weeks ago, only 2 weeks ago, maybe we can go an upgrade to 1.
That's fantastic.
I don't know.
Well, I think that we have to distinguish between the recognition that the UFO phenomenon is real and the extraterrestrial hypothesis, because that's another step. So in the terms of the acceptance of UFOs as a real phenomenon, I mean, we have the statement from General Bermudez. Another important ufologist in Chile from the Army is Major Bravo, who was with the aviation branch of the Army. That would be a 0, a 1. They totally recognize that the UFO phenomenon is real. But the extraterrestrial hypothesis, that's another question, because then you would have to have a body or a piece of metal or something that really could be proven. So there, I don't know, they admit the possibility, but there I would say maybe a 6 or 7 as far as the ET part. But the UFO, total acceptance that it's a real phenomenon and that it may pose possibly a threat to aviation, and that is something that governments should take seriously, absolutely. In South America, that is accepted today.
La visión en Uruguay de la Fuerza Aérea Uruguaya,
from the
o sea,
point
la
of
visión
view
del
of the
pueblo con
Uruguayan
la
Air
Fuerza Aérea
Force,
Uruguaya para mí es cero,
people, I would say it's 0. Because Uruguay, through its Air Force and UFO Investigation Commission, it even welcomed the idea of extraterrestrials as a possibility. However, there are 40 cases, again, that we've been unable to resolve because of how odd they are. And you have civilian pilots, military pilots that have chased these UFOs and have taken photographs. So I would say the openness in Uruguay means that people have a good image of what the information we're providing is. They believe it's reliable. And again, we use scientific methods because there's no other way to do it from our point of view. And the groups that address UFOs, like spiritual groups, that are also working and investigating this, accept what we are proposing. And we've even held a conference in 2012 where we invited all of the groups in Uruguay that do these investigations. I think people were very happy, and I think there was acceptance. Thank you very much.
Congresista.
Thank you, Congressman. Before giving my response, I would like to clearly state that I profoundly love my country, Peru, and I profoundly respect the armed forces of my country. In fact, they gave me the opportunity to work with them, and I profoundly admire the American people here as well. I want that to be very clear before I respond. What you're asking me is very complex, because at the moment when the Peruvian government decided to open this investigation office, they were admitting that there was a reality to this. They're not going to open an office on unicorns and ghosts. No, that's not what we're doing here. But On the other hand, this has been going on for 13 years and we have seen minimal results. And when I talk to the military personnel, they say that they have seen UFOs, but they can't come out publicly and say because there is a policy that has not yet opened up. And so I would say that that's why I couldn't give it a 10, but that would just be my response.
Oh, the Argentine government doesn't pronounce on the extraterrestrial hypothesis open, but in the history of our traditions, for example, in 1968, the president of Argentina, General Onganía, said, I believe in the flying saucers. Yo creo en los platos voladores. That openness always exists. In that case, was the president of a nation. But the government is investigating the UFOs with scientifically correctness in this moment. And in the future, maybe it will be some pronunciation. That is it.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. I want to thank our panel for being here today. This has been really interesting, and your openness and what's happening in each of your countries has been, I think, a real eye-opener for the rest of us. And with that, I'm going to conclude this hearing. We will be back here at 1:45. Meeting adjourned.